Stephanie Schumann and her mother, 42-year-old phone operator Deborah Drake, are suing Stephanie's father, 43-year-old auto parts dealer Eric Schumann, for the return of her personal belongings.
Order, all rise. Quiet in the courtroom, please. Yana, this is case number, it doesn't have a number. Case number 575 in the matter of Schumann Drake versus Schumann. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Sir, have a seat.
You are Miss Schumann.
Yes.
How old are you?
15.
You're her mother.
Yes.
Your parents are divorced?
Yes.
And you had been living with your father for about 4 or 5 years?
Yes, about 4 or 5 years.
There was some sort of an altercation at work.
Yes.
Place where your father had worked for a couple of years and he had gotten you a job there. And then after the altercation at work, you moved out.
Yes.
And claimed that after you moved out, your father either destroyed or kept some of your property. You weren't there during the course of the altercation or anything else. So why don't you have a seat for me?
Thank you.
When did you start to work with your father?
We started doing inventory services a few years back when I was in 8th grade, and we've been doing them off and on for the weekends just so I can make some money for myself.
All right, now when did this incident happen?
January 28th.
What happened?
We were working up in Long Beach, and we were working in a very enclosed area, and it tends to get very noisy when you're doing inventories.
What is it, doing inventories? Explain that to me.
It's where you go to a dealership, and you sit and you count parts.
Car parts?
Yes.
Okay.
And it got kind of noisy, and I had to ask him several times to repeat some part numbers, and he started getting very frustrated with me, and that morning I was not in the best mood to be dealing with this, so I started getting frustrated back. It led to some words passing between us, and then he told me, just go. I don't want you working with me no more. This is getting very annoying. Why don't you go take a walk? And I told him, look, I just want to continue working. I don't want to have a big deal with this. I don't want to have an argument. Please, let's just keep working. He told me, no, go take a walk. So I didn't want any trouble, so I just went and took a walk for about 30 minutes. And when I felt that I had cooled off enough and he had cooled off enough, we could handle working together, I went back into the dealership. I found where he was. I wanted to start working again, and he told me, no, I don't want you here for the rest of the day. You're fired. I don't want you ever working with me again. I told him, please, this will be the last time we ever work together. He said, no, go take a walk the rest of the day. So I decided to go ahead and comply with this because I didn't want anything further embarrassing to happen. And I went and took a walk. I ended up walking a couple streets down to a nearby park and just sat there for a few hours from about 8 o'clock to maybe 11:15.
In the morning?
In the morning. And I returned to find that his car was no longer in the parking lot. He was no longer at the site. I talked to our boss, and he said he'd already left at 9 o'clock in the morning. Didn't say where he was going, didn't say if he would ever be back. So I went out in front of the dealership, and no sign of him whatsoever until maybe 12 o'clock in the afternoon when I was offered a ride home with a coworker whom I didn't know. And from then, I went to our house. Nobody was home. I didn't have my key, and so I decided just to walk the mile and a half to my mother's house and to deal with things from then. And we just decided that I should live there, and it was no longer going to work that I lived with my father.
When did you go and get your property?
That night, I went to go and get some useful stuff like clothing, things that I found to be very personal.
Did you go with your mother?
Yes, I went with my mother and my stepfather, and we made a call to the police for a keep the peace call so that nothing gets out of hand.
So what is it that you claim your father has of yours?
For Christmas this last year, I received a Fender bass guitar.
So a guitar. What else?
Some T-shirts, some leather pants, some of my stuffed animals that I wanted to keep because I had cherished over those. A snow globe I got for Christmas from my step-grandmother. Some teddy bears that I received for Christmas.
Okay, but mostly the guitar.
Mostly the guitar and a VCR that he gave me.
So tell me what happened at work that day.
Well, the morning had started out a little rough. She had informed me before we started work that she was in a, quote, PMS mood. So I was already informed that this was going to be a rough afternoon. Her mood escalated through the course of the day, and the situation we were in, the work conditions we were in, were kind of difficult. She became frazzled by that, and it escalated from there to the point where she was using obscenities and such, And I knew at that point that we needed to change the situation where I asked her to step away. She refused. It escalated. Finally, she did step away, but after she had stepped away, my boss came up and informed me I no longer was employed there, and I requested to leave post haste.
So you got fired?
Essentially.
You no longer work for them?
Actually, they just recently contacted me to ask me to return, and I have, as of this last weekend.
So you were out of work for at least 2 months?
Yes.
What happened with your daughter's things?
As of that evening, we had gone through, my fiance and I, her bedroom, which was an absolute pigsty, cleaned everything up, boxed everything, placed it out on the front stoop where they were informed to come and get it. As she has all those possessions, less the guitar, a TV, I know nothing of a VCR, and some other items I can't release to her.
Why can't you release them to her?
One is a cell phone that I am financially responsible for. The other one is a handgun that we go target shooting on occasion. And unfortunately, she cannot have possession of that due to the fact she's living with her stepfather is an ex-convict.
You don't give a 15-year-old
Right.
handgun anyway. You have a guitar.
Yes. I wanted to exercise some tough love, and I felt retaining these items in lieu of maybe an apology I could receive on this, which I have not received as of yet.
You don't have a VCR, but you have a television set.
Correct.
Was that television set a gift to your daughter?
Also.
You didn't mention that.
I don't really want the TV set back because at my mother's house, I get to stay in my brother's room, and they had already a TV set in there, and I didn't find it necessary to have 2 TV sets.
And you know nothing about a VCR?
No, ma'am.
Your Honor, I received that VCR because he had bought a new VCR, and he told me that this one is no good and that it'd be better than throwing it out if I took it and used it in my room.
I stand corrected.
So there is a VCR there someplace?
Non-functional, but there is a VCR.
Okay, so she wants the guitar and the VCR. You have any more of her stuffed animals?
Not that I'm aware of. There are some Christmas items she's welcome to, yes.
Okay. So what your father wants, Ms. Schumann, really, is an apology. When you went to live with your father, you were 10?
Yes, I was about 10 years old.
Was that a court order? Or was that an arrangement between your parents?
I
Or you
think it
don't
was an
remember?
arrangement because I felt it'd be best that since my mother was leaving the house, that me and my brother be split up, so that'd be less problem for her, i.e. me and my brother not fighting so much. And
How old is your brother?
He's 17 right now.
Gotcha. I'm here to, other than these items which your dad's going to give you back, to make things better.
Okay.
From the time you were 10 years old, did he take reasonable care of you?
Physically,
Be honest.
yes, but
Yeah.
emotionally, not really.
He may not be perfect. Did he try?
I felt that he didn't try very hard when it comes to day-to-day living.
Maybe he didn't have the capacity. All
That's
right?
what I felt too.
Maybe. But teenage kids are sometimes difficult.
I agree.
Right?
Yes.
Had some of those. Bert's had some of those. Are you happy living with your mother now for a while?
I'm quite happy living over there.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. 15-year-old Stephanie Schumann says after a fight with her father, Eric Schumann, he kicked her out of the house and kept her belongings.
Now, your father doesn't intend to keep these things from you. What he intended to do was he wanted you to say, I'm sorry for causing you so much difficulty. You were in a bad mood. I got fired. I was off work for 2 months because of what happened. At least say sorry.
I understand that. And I also feel that, I don't want to seem like, a stuck-up child, but I feel that I should receive an apology for being abandoned in Long Beach.
Yeah, that
was-
probably wasn't the right thing to do. Sometimes parents aren't perfect. I'll tell you a story. When one of my children came home from college, their first year, I went and picked them up at the bus station. He got off the bus, and I noticed something glimmering in his ear. I said, oh, that's interesting. Take it out. This was a long time ago. I've softened up a little bit since. As long as it's not sticking on the end of his nose, I'm happy. But then, I said, what is that thing hanging out of your ear? Oh, told me pretty much, get a life. So I said to him, you and your friend may get into the car. The earring cannot. So he thought I was joking. I attempted to get into the car, and I left. I left him at the bus station. And he managed to find his way home. Sure, he said, how could you dare do that? Leave me at the bus station. I said, I will, I'm here picking you up. I travel. Get the earring out of your ear. So he came home and spent the Thanksgiving holiday, and he went back, and I drove him back to the bus station. And as soon as he got into the bus, put it back in his ear. But I did abandon him at the bus station. Now, does that mean I maybe could have handled it a little bit differently? Absolutely. But he knew I loved him. Sometimes parents are not perfect, and they don't handle things perfectly. That doesn't mean you're supposed to stay angry at your father forever. He certainly doesn't want to be angry at you.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
He doesn't want to. So give him a hug.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
And
Okay.
I wasn't angry at him. I did, in fact, make an effort to get a hold of him after, what, a month?
Approximately.
About a month, to inform him, you know, since moving out, I have picked up with my life, and
I'm very proud of her.
like I'm in the drama. I'm going to be in the drama play. I'm in the show choir. I'm in the choir at our school. I'm in the band at our school, and I'm taking more responsibility with my life. And I just wanted to share that with him.
Okay. So you'll make arrangements to get your guitar and the VCR. You take care of that within the next day or so?
Certainly.
Great. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
He wasn't exactly the perfect father, but he did try.
We learn from our mistakes.
Don't mouth off. It gets you nowhere.
I'm so sorry for what's happened. I hope we can mend what, bonds we've broken and get our relationship back together.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Smith versus Rogers. Step forward, please.
33-year-old convenience store manager Grace Smith is suing her former live-in boyfriend, 34-year-old foreman Bruce Rogers, for the cost of her braces. She claims he paid for the braces with money from their joint savings account.
All right, this is a very convoluted and mysterious case since each of you is suing for the same thing, the cost of your braces. I'm going to try to piece together what I understand from these complaints, because they are rather strange. The two of you lived together with your children for several years. According to you, Miss Smith, there came a time when you wanted to have braces put on your teeth to straighten your teeth, make you smile better. The braces were about $3,300. You say that the defendant went to the orthodontist and surprised you, came home and gave you a paid receipt saying, I paid for your braces, and you believed that was a gift. Within a year of that, you separated. At the time of the separation, the defendant, according to you, had $8,000 in his savings account. But it was clear that you had also put in money into his savings account over the years that you lived together. So far, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
The defendant wrote you a check for $4,000, saying this was our savings account. You put in money, I put in money, here's half of the savings account. You say that he had, in addition to the savings account, money coming in from a job that he was doing, $6,000. And you feel as if you would be entitled to half of that as well. So far, correct?
So far, yeah.
And he says, I'm not giving you any money from work that I did already. I paid for your braces. Or, just don't have any right to that money. So you want the money back for the braces, which he already paid for. You understand that?
You the judge.
I know. Mr. Rogers is suing for the cost of the braces. $3,300, since he says he's not going to have a chance to see that smile because you don't look it together. Is that your claim?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Miss Smith, would you tell me why you believe that you would be entitled to any part of the $6,000 that Mr. Rogers had coming in from a job?
Okay, I put, over the 2 years that we were together, I put over $10,000 in the savings account. The first year, we took $5,000. I put $5,000. He put $5,000 on the house. The rest of the money stayed in a savings account. The second year, I put another $4,600 in there. $4,000 of it he gave me back. There was another $6,000 that I have no account for. That's the reason I asked him, I said, what about the $3,000 that's coming in? Well, you're wearing your braces out the door. I'll never get to see you smile, so there's your $3,000. During the time we was together, I was taking our children and getting their teeth fixed. We started talking about it. I said, I don't like the gap in my teeth. I said, I never smiled. Well, he said, will you go check on it, see how much it costs and everything, let me know, and I'll go pay for it. So I did. If I didn't have the money to go pay for it, so I went and checked on it.
Well, you did. It came out of your savings account.
And so he
Just a second. Ms. Rogers, where did you think he got the $3,300 from to pay your braces?
from the savings account.
Of course. job.
For where we both put money in.
I understand that. But you knew he was taking the money out of the savings account. Over the years that you were together, didn't you purchase anything that came out of that savings account?
I never touched a savings account.
Well, you never touched it. But it was used for purchases of things. Didn't you purchase things, go on vacation, do things?
Yes. Yes, we did.
Of course you did. I mean, you don't expect any court to go over your finances for the last 2 years and figure out where each dollar went that was in that savings account.
No, no, ma'am.
Of course not. So you got braces. Braces were $300, $400. There's your money. He gave you $4. You got your braces. That's $7,300 or $7,400. And you say you put in 10 altogether, and in the course of 2 years, maybe you spent a couple of $1,000s on something, the two of you. Going away on vacations. Did you ever go away on vacations together? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Who paid for the vacations?
We both did.
From what?
From saving.
So that's what happens. Now what do you want? Now what do you want? You want the money for the braces?
Yeah.
Why do you think you're entitled to the money back for the braces?
Well, when she brought home the payment plan from the orthodontist, we sat down, we went over it. She went to the dentist. He referred her to the orthodontist, which the dentist wrote a letter stating that. And she went, the orthodontist seen what they could do for her, gave her a payment plan, and by paying all at one time, we could save anywhere between $300 to $600, depending on what payment plan we did if we paid it all at once. So I agreed that we would pay it all at once. Well, I also made the statement that she would have to help rebuild the savings because it took a lot out of the savings at the time. And it wasn't 2 months after I paid for the braces she left.
Consider it like going away on a vacation, Mr. Rogers. You went away on a vacation, only this vacation she's going to have nice teeth. You can't get either one of them back. You decided to pay it all at one time. You decided, right?
Yeah, well, we made the agreement, yes.
No. You decided. I don't think she made any kind of decision at all. You decided to go to the dentist. You wanted to save some money. You paid it all at one time, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, if you had paid it in installments, then she would have been responsible.
I wished I'd have done that.
Right. Well, hindsight is 20/20. Did you ever hear that statement? So you've got your $6,000 that you had coming in from the job when you separated. That's yours. She's got the braces. Consider it you paid for them out of your savings. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Goodbye.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I think he should have gave me half of my money because I worked hard for my money just like he did.
A nightclub. Valerie says Billy punched her in the mouth, chipping her teeth and dislocating her jaw.
Order. All rise. This is case number 4 on the calendar in the matter of Brookhart versus Robinson. Thank you. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Have seats.
All right, I have a claim, an answer, and a countersuit. And each of you claims that the other caused you injury during an assault that took place outside of a nightclub. Ms. Brookhart, when did this assault happen?
On February 2nd, Your Honor.
What time did it happen?
Approximately 2:30 in the morning.
Where were you?
We were exiting the nightclub. The pub had closed, and we
Who
all
were you
kind of. I was with my Christina Moore, one of my witnesses, this one closest to me, and we were leaving the nightclub. The club closed. We were all leaving at the same time. Christina and his witness Michelle had some words in the bathroom. As we walked out of the club, it kind of escalated into yelling. At that time, Michelle swung at Chrissy. It had been snowing. Christina slipped and fell.
Okay. You saw all this. This is things
yeah.
that you saw. Okay. Stop shaking your head. You'll have a chance to speak. So this young lady swung at your friend. She didn't connect,
No.
and your friend slipped and fell.
Yes.
Okay. What happened next?
At that time, Michelle came over. Chrissy kind of stood up, and the two of them just went to town on each other.
So the two of them started to fight.
Yes.
And who else was outside?
Billy and a friend of theirs from Cincinnati.
Go ahead.
At that time, when I saw my friend was getting beat up, I stuck my arm out and I said, okay, whoa, you know, this is enough. The defendant grabbed my arm and flung it and told me to stay the F out of it. So then he started hitting me with his chest. And,
What do you mean hitting you with his chest?
He kind of came up to me and started bumping his chest up against me, you know, telling me to stay out of it.
Okay.
He said, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You ain't got nothing. And I said, what are you trying to do? I said, are you trying to fight with a girl? And he's like, what? And I said, I'm a registered nurse. I take care of people for a living. I'm a woman, you're a man, and I'm not going to fight with you. He just persisted to hit me with his chest and push me. I kind of pushed him back and stepped back away from him. And he kept yelling at me and talking trash, basically. Finally, I said, you can't hit a girl. And he said, I'll have to show you I can't hit a girl. And he just wham, wham, and hit me, busted my lip in 3 different places. He came up in front of me then and started going like this, as if I was going to hit him back, like I'm stupid and I want to get hit again. At that time, I turned around. My face was numb. I'd never been hit before. My face was numb. I turned around to feel and see if my teeth were still there. He chipped 2 of my teeth. Then, as I turned back around, Michelle got off of Christina. They were on the floor wrestling on the ground. Yeah.
She got off.
Kicked Chrissy in the back of her neck. At that time, Billy came over, kicked Chrissy in the back of her neck, jumped on her, and started beating her. I looked at Michelle. We kind of made eye contact, and I said, Michelle, get him off of her. Get him off of her. Michelle's kind of tapping him, saying, Billy, you're crazy. Billy, you're crazy. She was kind of pulling on him, you know, and we're both yelling to stop, and he's just, beating the crap out of her. She still has lumps on her neck, Your Honor, and bumps on her head from this incident that occurred in February. At that time, I reached down and grabbed his collar, and I said, get off of my friend. He stood up, turned around, swung, and just made contact right here and dislocated the left side of my jaw. Shh. After that happened, I grabbed my friend and I said, we're going to the hospital. I said, I'm pressing charges against you, buddy, and you're going to be sorry.
You went to the emergency room?
Yes, I did.
You have the report? Please.
Yes, I did. These are pictures of my mouth, and you can see on my right arm the picture of the bruises, and that's the police report. That's mine and his.
Did you press charges against him?
Oh, I tried to, Your Honor, and they said that because it was a cross complaint, because I think he was smart enough to know if I was pressing charges against him that he'd better do something so he didn't get in trouble. So he also filed a report stating that I guess I attacked him, and so the charges were dropped because it was considered a cross complaint.
Okay. Do you have any medical records?
I didn't get a copy of any medical report. They basically just told me that my jaw wasn't broken, that it was dislocated, and that it popped back in on its own.
They usually write that down in a report, madam.
Yeah, I didn't get a
Doesn't
copy.
necessarily mean that you always get a copy of the report, but I'm telling you for the future, it's a good thing to have if you ever go to court.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Robinson, now I'll hear your version of the events, please.
Okay. On February 2nd, we were at the club, like she said, and we were leaving. And the altercation started in the restroom with Christina and Michelle. And I told Michelle to let's go, you know, just to not even bother with arguing with them. They proceeded, both of them, Ms. Burkhart and Ms. Moore, followed us out to the parking lot. So when we were standing out there, Christina starts making comments about Michelle's mother, and Michelle had asked her to stop making those comments. As we walked, they kept walking, pushing up beside us.
Who's they?
Valerie and Christina kept pushing up beside us. Finally, Michelle turned around and was like, I've had it, Chrissy. Stop with your comments. Chrissy punched her. She punched her in the face. She made the first hit. And then after she hit her, I stepped between them, and I put my hands like this to both of them and said, stop, guys. You guys are going to go to jail. They had been drinking. I think she had had a couple of beers, and I was like, you both are going to go to jail. Stop.
You hadn't had anything to drink?
I hadn't drank. I have seizures. I can't drink on the medication. Oh. Anyway, after I had stepped in the middle, Chrissy then proceeded to hit me in the left side of my head, right here, around my temple. And upon that, I shoved her backwards and told her to get away from me. And when I did so, Miss Burkhart grabbed me by the collar of my fleece, which I have here. And she started punching me in the back of my head, yanking me. And she pulled me so hard that she ripped the collar off of it. And after her hitting me about 3 or 4 times, I was like, stop hitting me, trying to get away from her, pull away from her. And I did grab her arm, trying to get her off of me, and she would not let go. I did hit her after she had ripped and hit me in the back of the head, trying to get her off, and she still would not let me go.
Where did you hit her?
I hit her right here.
In the mouth?
Yes, I hit her there.
Go ahead.
And after I'd hit her, she still wouldn't let me go. And there was at one point in the fight that both of them were on me. They kicked me in the back of the head. I do have medical reports from the doctor where I was treated. I went into seizures and was taken by ambulance to the emergency room.
Let me see your report.
And I also have a copy of my police report.
Why did you miss 3 doses of your seizure medication prior to this incident?
I don't think that was actually correct. I had missed two doses.
2?
Which
Why?
was, I take 100 milligrams 4 times a day, and I had taken 200 milligrams that day, but I had been at work, and then we got off, we left, so I had just forgotten to take the other 2 pills.
There's also an indication here in the report that you have a recent history of alcohol use. Did you tell him that?
No. I did not tell
Somebody must have told him that you were with in order for them to treat you properly. You are a smoker, is that right?
I do smoke.
And there's a question mark about drugs, but certainly recent alcohol use is circled by the doctor.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Valerie Brookhart says she was assaulted by Billy Robinson outside a nightclub. Billy says he was punched first.
Okay, step up. You were there that evening?
Yes.
Okay. What were you fighting with her about in the bathroom?
It wasn't what we were fighting about in that time in the bathroom. It goes beyond that. It's every time that I'd ever seen Michelle after we had separated. She would come to my mom's house. She had came to our apartment, and it was just a really bad breakup.
So you had a really bad breakup. You didn't get along with each other, but I watched you as they were testifying, and there's no question that you were not only agreeing with the fact, but sort of saying, I did the right thing, that you punched a few people, right?
That's correct.
Who did you punch?
I did punch Michelle.
All right. Now, you explain to me why you punched Michelle, because she was getting in your face.
Right, well, we were fighting. I mean, she swung at me and missed.
And you fell down.
That's correct.
And then you got up.
Yes.
And what did you do when you got up?
I defended myself. That's what I did.
You hit her.
Yes, ma'am.
And you connected.
That's correct.
And you also hit him.
You know what? I don't even remember hitting him because she beat the crap out of me, literally. I felt tons of fists on me. I had bruises all over me. I don't even think they had a scratch on them for me.
Did you file a complaint against them?
I didn't, and at the time, Your Honor, I had...
You did or you did not?
I did not.
Well, why not if you had bruises and marks all over you?
Because at the time, I had a prior court date. It was just too much stress, Your Honor.
Prior court date for what?
I had a traffic violation.
You don't get too stressed because you have a traffic violation, madam.
Your Honor, I was with her for 2 years, and it was in a bad relationship for 2 years. I just wanted it to be gone, and if it would not be for this case, I mean, this is hopefully the last time I ever see her.
Well, I'm talking about hitting him.
Your Honor, he hit me. He jumped on me after Michelle had got up from me. I didn't charge him. You know, I'm not stupid. I'm really not.
Your Honor, she was lying in the fetal position, covering her head on the ground. He was crouched down on top of her. She didn't even see who was hitting her. I mean, at that time, she wasn't even defending herself.
There is no way that Ms. Brookhart could have seen where she was because she and I were in a totally different area than these two were after the fight got started. When she grabbed me by my neck, we were over next to the club. They were out in the middle of the parking lot.
I'm talking about before
and she
that.
had a hold of me, shaking me. There's no way that with mine and her confrontation that she could have seen how she was laying at all.
Step up. You're Michelle?
Yes, ma'am.
Michelle, did you take a swing at her?
Yes, after she connected with me right here, I still have the lump on the side of my head. I will not lie and say that when Christina slipped and fell that I did not proceed to beat the crap out of her, but when I came out of the bar, she consistently kept calling my mother a B, and just over and over and over and over again. And I took off my upper shirt and I said, Christina, that's enough. Stop it. And that's when we got face to face and we started shouting. Well, she swung and connected to me right here. Well, then my friend Sarah grabbed me, pulled me away. Then I had my back towards them. They were all three going at it. Then I finally went back because I told Sarah to let me go because they were going after Billy. Well, Valerie and Billy were hitting each other. And Valerie had a hold of this. The fleece was like this. Valerie had a hold of it like this, punching him in the back of the head. And for 6 months, I took care of Billy. And I know that any trauma to the back of his head or his back anywhere is going to send him into a seizure. And so I went to break him up. Then me and Chrissy were in a different location than them two. She slipped and fell. I ran up to her, I kicked her, and then I proceeded hitting her again. I'm not going to lie about that.
Were you the one who took Mr. Robinson to the hospital, or did he go by ambulance?
No, ma'am. I called the ambulance at the apartment because before we even got home, we were driving, and he started having seizures in the car.
How did you know he was having a seizure?
Because when Billy starts to have seizures, his eyes roll into the back of his head, and his mouth kind of goes crooked, and he just shakes like that. And then when we got home, our roommate Jason and his friend Paul and Sarah helped me carry him into the house. I laid him on the floor, and then I called 911.
How much did you have to drink when you were there?
I'm not a drinker. I had probably a half to 3/4 of a Zima.
What is that?
It's like a beer, fake beer, kind of.
And you?
Had one beer and one water.
Yeah, the place would go out of business. Well, I must tell you, Miss Brookhart, his injuries seem a lot more serious than yours.
But he's known to have seizures. And he was drinking that night at the club.
How do you know that?
I know that because
we were there with him. We were a table apart, pretty much.
He came over to my sister's house and bragged about, him and Michelle both came over to my sister's house bragging about how they beat the crap out of us. That's why she's here.
Step up. Tell me your name.
Vanessa Horsley.
How are you related to this whole case?
This is my sister. Michelle was a friend of our family. After they had broken up, she would come over to our house. We still, kept in contact with Michelle.
Okay.
They had come over bragging.
Who's they?
Michelle, Billy, and another person, telling me that they had jumped them, that they were kicking her in the back of the neck. I mean, they was telling me this in detail. They told me how they were on Special K and candy flipping.
What is that?
I don't know. You have to ask them.
Do you know?
It's some sort of drug. I don't know. They're known to be cocaine
Special
dealers
K?
Yes.
in Dayton.
I never heard of that. What is Special K?
Special K is a veterinary tranquilizer that they use that people do bake and sell as a drug. I've never tried Special K myself because it is a tranquilizer, and it puts people in a comatose state. And if I'm going to go out and party, I don't want to be put in a comatose state where I don't know what's going on.
And what else aside from Special K?
Candy flipping? Yeah, I don't
What's
know.
candy
I have
flipping?
no clue.
Ecstasy and acid.
Do
It's
they-
also referred
do
to
they
as
use
trolling.
these things in the club that you
I
were
don't
at?
do acid because
No, no. Do they use these things?
Oh, yes, they use them in a lot of clubs.
In this club?
Yes, they have used those things in that club.
When did they come over and have this discussion?
2 weeks later.
Does that sound familiar to you?
Yes, the time that we were at Valerie's house was way before this fight ever
Vanessa's.
happened, or Vanessa's, I'm sorry, before this fight ever happened. And this is the only time I've ever met her in my entire life. And I have never seen her or talked to her since this happened.
You have not?
Not
You have
once.
not been to the house since?
Not once.
Your Honor.
I've been there one time. I met her one time.
Your
And
Honor.
and it was way before the fight.
I spoke to Vanessa on the phone and told her on the phone what happened. We went to Vanessa's house before the fight. After the fight is when I spoke to Vanessa on the phone and told her what happened.
What did you tell her?
I told her that me
Oh,
and
look at
Chrissy
me.
got into it, and Chrissy hit me in the side of the head, and
Look at me.
that I beat the crap out of Chrissy, and Valerie and Billy got into it, and they exchanged some punches. And I mean, ask Vanessa. I mean, the whole 2 years me and Chrissy were together, Chrissy was beating the crap out of me.
Sort of interesting. You say that after this fight, when your sister was injured, and that she came to your house?
Mm-hmm.
Who else lives in your house?
My husband and my 3 children.
Why would you have her in your house after she violently assaulted your sister?
I didn't know about it then, Your Honor.
You mean
They'd come over to tell me about it. I mean, they'd come over.
you mean you have no contact with your sister?
I lived in Cedarville and I had no phone, so anyone that wanted to make contact with me would come to my home.
You mean they just came totally unannounced?
Yes, ma'am.
Why would these two people gratuitously make the trip to your house and proceed to confess to the commission of a double assault?
I'm not sure, Your Honor.
I'm not sure either. I'm not sure if I believe you. How's that? Just doesn't make sense. Now you can all sit down.
Yes.
Except you. Do you both believe that you behaved irresponsibly that evening?
No.
I believe that the situation could have been dealt with differently, yes.
You don't think so?
No, because I didn't start a fight with anybody. I was just standing there watching my friend get beat up. And when I tried to
No,
stop
you
the fight
did, in
is when...
fact, pull him on the back of his shirt and put your hands on him.
Yes, I did. After he busted my lip. After he hit me twice in the face, like you see in that picture.
Well, how did you get behind him in order to grab the back of his shirt after he punched you in the lip?
Just like I said before, Your Honor, the 2 girls were fighting. The one girl got off of her. Billy had already hit me in the mouth at this point.
No, I don't believe that, Miss Brookhart. I don't believe if you're hit in the mouth so badly that your mouth is numb and your lip is split and your teeth were chipped, then you're telling me you got back into the fray by grabbing him, not in the front, but in the back.
Because when I had turned back around, they were already on the floor fighting. And I just reached
They
right
were?
down. Yes.
They were,
Yeah.
not you.
Right.
So you got back into the fray.
I tried to get him off of my friend. So did Michelle. You can ask her. She did
So
too.
she tried to get him off of a friend.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe you.
Well, that's...
I don't know if I believe you. I believe that you got into a brawl that evening. Both of you. I believe that you both behaved very badly that evening. I don't believe, quite frankly, Mr. Robinson, everything that you tell me about your medication, about your not drinking at all that evening. I don't know about drugs. Probably not. There's nothing in a toxicology report here that indicates that you were on any kind of drugs, but I didn't see a toxicology report, but I don't believe that you had nothing to drink that evening.
There is a toxicology report there.
For drugs.
Right.
It's clean for drugs, but not alcohol.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Sure,
And
okay.
by history, either by history given by you or the friend who brought you in, you had had a recent history of alcohol, despite the fact that you tell me that you can't drink alcohol because of seizure disorders. Right? So I'm not exactly sure that you're telling me the truth either. However, I believe that both of you behaved badly that evening, and you got into a brawl. And both of you take care of your own medical expenses. You claim and your counterclaim are dismissed. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I didn't.
Store clerk Cynthia Sanchez for unpaid babysitting fees. Cynthia says Stephanie made a false report to Child Services.
Order. Come to order. All rise. Quiet in the courtroom. Yeah, this is case number 10 on the calendar in the matter of Moon versus Sanchez. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Ma'am, have a seat, please.
Miss Moon, you run a daycare center. Is that out of your home?
Yes.
How many children do you take care of?
My license capacity allows up to 10.
How long have you been doing it?
Year and a half.
There came a time, according to your complaint, that the defendant brought her baby to you to take care of.
Yes.
And she signed a contract. And included in that contract was a 2-week cancellation clause, which means she had to give you 2 weeks' notice of her intention to remove the child from your daycare. Is that right?
Yes.
And at some point, and you'll tell me when that was, you noticed that the child had what appeared to you to be a bruise on his back, and you weren't sure what it was, and you did what you felt you were required to do by law, which was to call Child Protective Services. Right?
Yes.
You arrived at the daycare center. There was a detective there, according to you.
Yes.
Ultimately, it was determined that there were no problems with the child. There was either a birthmark or a small bruise. In any event, you decided that you didn't want the child to go back to that daycare.
Yes, Your Honor.
Immediately. And you are suing her for the 2 weeks of daycare.
And also absent days.
What's absent days?
When the child misses, it's in the contract that I still require payment when a child's absent.
Okay. Well, when was the child absent? That's not in your complaint.
He had missed 3 days. He was only there for a week and a half.
And how much did she pay you?
Nothing.
Nothing at all.
No.
How many days was he actually there?
5.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And how much a day do you get?
Under her circumstances, social services assist her with daycare, and so they pay an hourly rate.
So she doesn't pay you. Social services pays you?
Yes. But social services does not cover absent days nor 2 weeks cancellation notice as required in the contract. Would you like to see it?
Yes.
It is from here to here.
All right. I have a couple of questions to ask you. How many children did you have at the time that Miss Sanchez brought her son into your daycare?
That's been some time ago. I really couldn't recall off the top of my head.
Well, when was it?
It was in January. I'm assuming probably 5 or 6 because my license capacity includes my children, and they go to school all day.
So you don't know how many children you had in January?
No.
How many children do you have now?
7, plus my 3.
How many children did you have last month?
It varies.
What do you mean it varies?
Well, last month I had some children go on vacation. I had a child move to Wichita. I mean, there's circumstances to where you're
How many were enrolled in your school last month? I don't care whether they were on vacation. How many were enrolled?
Like I said, I don't know.
Okay. How many people?
I didn't see that pertained to the case, so I didn't bring that information. What does the amount of children enrolled in my daycare have to do with her son having bruises?
Shh, shh. Hey, I don't want to hear anything from you. Miss Moon, when you go to a court and you have a trial, one of the things that you do is you answer the questions posed to you by either the judge or a lawyer, because sometimes information that may not seem to be relevant to you is relevant to the person who is required to make a fact-finding determination. In this case, that's me. So I believe it is relevant how many children you had last month enrolled in your school.
Like
And as
for me to
far
go
as I'm
call and have my records looked up?
Oh, no, absolutely not. The fact
Okay.
that you, as a daycare provider with a limited number of children, have no independent memory of how many children were in your school last month, I'm not talking about a year ago or in January, is a relevant piece of information
Which
to
week
me.
would you
I
like?
will move on with my next question. Now, under what circumstances do you say you noticed these bruises?
He was complaining about his back hurting. And I have the witness here. She was one of my daycare mothers that was there picking up her child when he was complaining about it. And I lifted up his shirt and looked, and she is sitting across the room, and she was shocked by it.
Okay, so step up, please. I'd like to hear from you.
Well, I had arrived to pick up my daughter when I got off work, and the boy was complaining that his back was hurting. And Stephanie went over there and lifted up the back of his shirt.
This was, just a second, this was then at the end of the day.
Of my day.
What time was that?
About, I would guessing, say 3 to 4.
And did you hear the child complaining that his back hurt?
Yes, I did.
When you got there?
Right.
Did you ask the plaintiff whether the child had been complaining before?
No, I did not.
Was the child complaining before?
He had not
3
said
o'clock.
anything. He had just gotten up from a nap. That's why.
Speak. Answer my question. Had the child
I said
complained
no.
before 3 o'clock?
No.
The answer was no. What time had Miss Sanchez's child come to your daycare that morning?
12:30.
Is that right?
Yes.
So the child was there for approximately 2.5 hours, and the first complaint that you heard from the child was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Is that right?
Yes.
Had the child been there the day before?
No, he was absent that day.
Is that correct?
Yes.
What was the reason the child was absent that day?
I had a doctor appointment, and I was gone pretty much most of the day.
A doctor's appointment for yourself or for the child?
For myself. I was pregnant at the time.
You went with the child?
Yes, the child went with me.
How old is he?
He is now 4 years old.
How old was he when he was at the daycare center?
3 years. 3 years and like 10 months.
Now, when you picked up the child's shirt, I assume you did?
Yes.
What did you see?
Bruises.
Tell
what
me about the
appeared
bruises.
to us to be bruises.
Are they size of a small fist? Were they circular? Were they
They were
black and blue?
Well, the social services described them as
No,
finger
I don't want to hear what
bruises,
social services.
And
If they-
so about the size of your finger. That
Finger-
would be.
Tim, tell me what you observed.
I would say that it looked like fingertip bruises also. It was on the ribs. And I thought that I had saw them on both sides, but the SRS findings said that they did not.
I don't care what the SRS
Well, I
findings
thought
say.
that I had saw them on both sides.
Okay. Now let me ask you a question about these bruises. Were they red or black and blue?
They were dark. They were like a darker bruise. Like they had been there for a couple of days at least.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Daycare owner Stephanie Moon says former client Cynthia Sanchez terminated her services without proper notice.
You called social services, is that right?
I'm mandated by law under my license to report it.
Right. Absolutely. You are. Is this the first time that you had ever reported an incident?
Yeah, the first time I've ever found bruises on a child, yes.
Okay, so it was the first time you ever reported an incident in the then year and some months that you've been in business. How many people supervise these children with you?
Just me.
Just you and 10 children?
Yes.
What are the ages of the 10 children?
Well, I have a 7 and 8 year old that go to school all day. One of my daycare children is 9. He goes to school all day. I have him in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon in summertime. I have an infant that is now 10 months myself. There is a 7-month-old. I have a 2-year-old, 2 4-year-olds right now.
Are you not required by the state to have someone there with you when all the children are there, when all 10 children are there?
No, my license capacity is for me being there, I'm allowed 10 children. If I have an extra person there, I would be allowed more children.
Now, tell me what happened when you arrived at the daycare center.
I was met by detective and social worker. I actually know detective, and
From?
My son played baseball for the police department, and that's when I met him. And I was kind of shocked to see him. I was like, I didn't know you had a child that attended daycare here. And he goes, Cynthia, I'm not here for that reason. And then he explained to me what the problem was, and of course I was in shock. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. He goes, you did, and I did not know there was bruises on my child, so that's what they said they were. So he took me back inside, and I pulled up my son's shirt, and I was looking at him. And I asked my son right in front of the detective and the social worker, they were standing right there, you know, what happened? I said, what happened? And he made the statement that he had fell off of his bike. You know, he did it on his bike, and I was kind of shocked because he had not told me that. The social worker told me I had to take him to the pediatrician the following day to have a complete exam done on my child, which was fine. I took off of work the next day. Actually, I was going to have my sister take him, and I decided I needed to be there as his mother.
Were there ever any charges filed
No,
with
Your
regard
Honor.
to this incident?
I have a thing from the SRS that says that they were not.
All right, social services found the report to be unsubstantiated. Okay. Now, at what point did you decide not to send your child back to the daycare?
The day I had took him to the doctor, she was kind of shocked at the allegations. She had seen my child since he was like 3 months of age, and I was really upset about it because I don't even hit my children. I don't hit them, and I felt like she didn't know me well enough to come to that allegation that I had abused my child. You know, kids are kids.
Okay, Ms.
Could I
Sanchez,
say something,
let me
please?
stop you right there, please. Ms. Moon did not make that determination. What Ms. Moon did was look at your child, and there was somebody else there, and they saw what they believed to be marks on him.
Right.
She is a mandated reporting source. She is required by law, if she suspects child abuse or neglect, to put in a call. That being said, I do not believe that you are required, under the circumstances, to give her 2 weeks' notice, because I can understand that there would be, under these circumstances, animosity.
May I say something?
Sure.
Daycares have these contracts for several reasons. One, financial stability, because you got to have a profitable business to stay open. So if you're saying, oh, well, the mother gets mad at me because I had to call social services to inspect something.
I'll give it to you both ways.
And the parent doesn't have to pay 2 weeks severance,
I'll
so
give it to you. I'll give it to you 2 ways, madam. First of all, I've looked at your contract very carefully. Contract is something I know. You say in your contract, if you find yourself no longer in need of my services, I require 2 weeks' notice prior to termination. If you want the parents to pay for those 2 weeks, you have to put that in your contract.
Here was one other case that I've won.
You won other cases where people terminated?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd like to see it. Why people terminated you, for all these people terminated you without giving you 2 weeks' notice. I mean, I can understand it.
Geez,
I
that's
can
a lot.
understand it.
That's all the same case. It is one file for you. To see that in our state, we are allowed our 2 weeks severance paid, because if you were fired from your job, would you not expect unemployment?
I want to tell you something, madam. If I lived in your state that permitted a single person to have 10 children in their home without any support services, without at least 2 other providers
I
in
don't
the
even
home.
have 10 children
I'm
at one
speaking!
time. So?
Case is dismissed.
Here are my papers, please.
Step out.
I've had one other case, and I was granted my severance pay.
I feel like it went my favor. You see, she's hostile anyway, and I'm glad I didn't keep my son in her care.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Balarjan versus Vanessian, step forward, please.
22-year-old production control assistant Elisa Balarjan is suing her former friend, 21-year-old customer service rep Thomas Van Eschen, for the cost of a trip to Arizona to attend a NASCAR race.
Ms. Balarjan, according to your complaint, you, the defendant, and I think one other person, decided to take a little vacation trip, a little road trip. And the agreement was that you would split expenses. The defendant didn't have the money that was necessary. You agreed to advance certain monies to him for the trip. So far correct?
Yep.
And then there also came a time when you were on the trip, sir, that you lost your wallet.
Yes.
And so that they were advancing you money.
Yeah, but at the same time, I had money every time.
According to your answer, there came a time when you lost your wallet. Shall I read you what you wrote?
I know what I wrote.
And they were advancing you some money.
Okay?
Isn't that what you wrote?
It is.
All right. I gather that the amount of money that was advanced is not the issue. The issue is that all 3 of you stayed at your grandfather's house for some part of the trip for free, and You should be credited in that amount so that that would vitiate the debt.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So what was his third of the trip?
What he still owes me, Your Honor.
No, I didn't ask you that.
His third of the trip would be $690.67.
And he paid you $150 after the trip was over, and another $100 before you went on the trip. So far, is that correct?
Yes.
Leaving $440.
I don't think I should owe any. I mean,
No.
for the fact.
I understand you don't think you should owe any, but the reason you don't feel as if you should owe any is not because of the amount, but because your grandfather put you all up for free.
Right, correct, yes.
All right. When did you decide to stay at his grandfather's?
I had actually made reservations for a hotel before we had went down there. Mr. Vaneshan had offered us a place to stay at his grandfather's house, free of charge.
What did he say to you?
Do
you remember what you said?
No, I don't. I don't remember. I don't think I even said that. I mean, after we lost my wallet, I was just like, okay, we can stay at my grandfather's house. We were already staying at my grandfather's house the first night, and it's just the fact that they got all the room free, they got food free, phone bill.
I haven't gotten to that yet, sir. So he said we can stay at my grandfather's for free. Does that sound right?
I don't remember saying we could stay there for free, but yeah, sure. I mean,
Well, did you ever discuss how much it would cost to stay at your
did
grandfather's
not.
house? You did not?
no,
How many nights did you stay at your grandfather's house?
5 nights.
Is that right?
4 nights.
Let's say 4 nights. It's easy. And did you have any meals there?
We had 3 meals, Your Honor.
In total, or 3 meals a day?
3 meals for the entire week.
Did you use his phone?
No, I did not.
Anybody else use the phone?
Not that I am aware of, no.
You know anything different? Did you ever get a bill from your grandfather for
No,
long
I couldn't
distance
get the bill
calls?
I could not get the bill from the company, so
No, did you ever get a... Pay attention. I said, did you ever get a bill from your grandfather?
I did
For
not.
long distance...
Try it again.
I'm going to try it again.
Okay.
Did you ever get a bill from your grandfather for long distance calls?
I did not.
Perfect! So you explain to me now, in 30 seconds or less, sir, why you should be relieved of your third of $440 when it cost you nothing to stay at your grandfather's house and you had no previous agreement with the plaintiff or the other person that by staying at your grandfather's house, this would do away with your having to pay your third of the trip.
Well, obviously, I shouldn't have to pay because he's part of my family, but I think they should have to pay. They would have had to pay the cost of a hotel for 2 people. They would have had to pay to go out to eat every day, and then they ran up his phone bill, which I didn't get the bill. But I mean, also I have a affidavit here that was notarized from my mother. If you want, I can give you her work number if you want to call her. I mean, she couldn't make it here. She's at work, and
It says what?
basically that she came over to my mother's house asking my mother to pay for me. She goes, yeah, he owes me money. Can you pay for him? And my mom's like, well, then sat down and talked to her about it, or stood at the door and talked to her about it. She's like, yeah, I will send your grandfather some money to cover that. And he never received a thing.
If she agreed to pay your grandfather for something and she didn't do it, which I doubt, that's between her and your grandfather. It's not between her and you. You had an agreement with her. Your agreement was you were going to split the cost of this trip 3 ways. Pay it! Judgment for the plaintiff, $440, that's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
And 40-year-old basketball coach Darius Foster for punching him after a junior league basketball game.
Order. All rise. Yeah, this is case number 585 on the calendar in the matter of Frazier versus Foster.
Thank you.
Parties have been sworn in. Judge, you may be seated. Folks, have seats, please.
Mr. Frazier, you were refereeing a basketball game. The defendant was the coach of one of the teams,
Yes, it was.
and it is your claim that the defendant, after the game, assaulted you.
Yes, he did.
Had you known him before this particular game?
Well, he's actually also a referee, and we had worked together prior to that, but we know each other cordially.
When did this happen, sir?
March 13th.
And what kind of basketball game was
This
it?
was a Boys and Girls Club, 14-year-old, I believe, 14-year-old basketball game.
Was it in the evening?
Yes.
Tell me what happened.
What happened basically is during the course of the game was evenly matched. During the course of the game, 2 kids had gotten into an altercation. They weren't fighting, they just basically had nudged each other after the whistle. At that point in time, I ran to the 2 children to break up whatever might have happened between the 2 kids. Shortly thereafter, as soon as I broke the 2 kids up, I looked up. Mr. Foster had run onto the court. The rules clearly state, and I have a rule book here to verify that the coach is not allowed to run onto the court. Okay? The two kids were not fighting. I broke up the situation between the two children, and when I realized Mr. Foster was on the court, I motioned for him to go back to his seat and sit down.
Did he do that?
He did it. He complied. But regardless of that, the rule clearly stipulates, and I could not deviate from what is the rule.
Don't tell me the rules state that he's not allowed to come out on the court.
No, under no uncertain terms, unless a player is injured, unless I beckon him onto the court. I did not beckon him onto the court. No one was injured. It was a fight about to happen, which did not happen.
I got you. So he came on the court. He's not allowed to do that under the rules. You motioned him to go back. He went back.
He went back.
But then you did what?
I gave him a technical foul.
Now, tell me what a technical foul is.
A technical foul is a team foul on a coach. Technical foul is 2 shots for the other team and the ball, okay?
Okay, so that means that the other team,
got an advantage.
his adversary, got an advantage.
Exactly.
Okay, and did they win the game?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
Not as a result of the technical foul. Okay,
but whatever, whether they did or they ended up winning the game.
They won the game.
So after the game, what happened?
After the game, I went to my partner, the guy I work with, and shook his hand, said, great game. He acknowledged and said, good game. I bent over to pick up my jacket. When I reached over to pick up my jacket, I saw Coach Foster come from his side of the bench to my side. I just assumed he was coming to say good game or whatever. He came over, and I had my jacket in one hand, and I was extending the other hand to say good game. I had my jacket on, and he punched me.
Where did he punch you?
In left side of my face, right around the orbital area of my eye. Blood.
Did he say anything?
Didn't say a word, didn't argue with me during the game, did not argue with me after the game, did not argue prior to striking me. He never said a word. It was a sucker punch. It was a mugging, a back alley mugging, because I had no idea that this man was angry. His facial expression, his body, never gestured to me like he was angry.
Were there other children still there?
All around, everybody, in front of the kids. It was just,
That's what I wanted.
It was a disgrace to do this in front of kids.
What kind of injury did you sustain?
After I was hit, blood just flew everywhere. My eye swelled really quick. As soon as he hit me, I looked at him, I said, well, I was just about to shake your hand. I couldn't believe you did this, I have pictures here to prove just how bad it was.
I'd like
Pictures
to see
were
them.
taken the next day. Actually, that night, I believe. I had to go to the emergency room. My insurance covered my emergency room, but the next day, I didn't have any idea. But the next day, I had half of a contact lens broken, stuck in the top of my eye. I didn't even realize my eye was so swollen that I had to reach in and pull it out. I went to the eye doctor the next day, and the eye doctor told me to come in there. He would examine it while it's swollen. He wants me to come back.
Do you have any receipts or bills?
Yeah, I do.
From the emergency room treatment? I'd like to see it.
The eye doctor wants me to come back. He wants to make sure that he examines this a couple more times, because this is a latent injury. This injury could detach retina, the orbital bone around my eye.
Mr. Foster, let me hear your version of the events, please, sir.
Yes, Your Honor. It was a 14-year-old basketball game. I knew how important this game was to me, so I went to both refs to let them know that this is the playoff game, and whoever loses, they eliminated from the playoff. Their season is over. So I wanted a fair game, and because of previous games that I coached, they called a game against me.
Do you do this for the enjoyment of it, or do you get paid as the coach?
I love refereeing as well as coaching.
Do you get paid as the coach?
No, ma'am. It's volunteer.
Okay. So you went to all the refs and you said, this is an important game to me.
Right, because...
Your Honor, he really emphasized to me.
Because the kids have put a lot of time and
I'm sure both teams put in a lot of time.
Right, and so I wanted to make sure we had a good game, Well, during the course of the game, Mr. Frazier, in my opinion, he was calling a bad game. But I played through it because I knew I had a talented team and that we can overcome this because we have beat the team before.
Your Honor, he also...
I don't want you to interrupt. He didn't interrupt you.
Okay.
So as the game went on, it began to become aggressive. And the kids were starting to push and shove, and wasn't no fouls being called. So what had happened was, I think it was in the fourth quarter with approximately 3 minutes left in the game, the kids got into an altercation. They started pushing each other. And I was looking for the ref, whether one ref had made a call. He called a foul on the other team. And then I was looking for the other ref. He was interacting with the parents on the sideline. So I just ran onto the court to break the fight up.
It was a fight?
Shh. I said don't interrupt. Go ahead.
It wasn't a physical fight. The guy was on the ground. He elbowed my guy in the groin. My guy kneed him in the back. The guy on the ground, he jumped up and got in the guy's face. So I was like, hey, man, they about to fight. My instinct just ran on the court to break it up before it escalated. Well, I grabbed the guy from the other team. I escorted him to his bench, and I was explaining to him that this was too big of a game for that. I said, man, you need to just calm down, man, get yourself together before you get thrown out of the game. So I pat him on his back, walked him to his bench. I went and got my guy and did the same thing. I even went to take my guy out of the game so that he can calm down. After that, Mr. Frazier, he turned to me and said, I have to call a tech on you for leaving the floor. I was like, hey, man, I went to break up 2 kids from fighting. He like, but you came onto the court. Clearly, Your Honor, that is the rule. But I thought that was the rule. When kids act in unsportsmanlike conduct, that they should also be assessed a tech. If they would have gotten a tech, it would have resulted into no free throws made. The ball would have been, it would have went to the alternating possession arrow.
Whatever, don't complicate me with the rules of
Okay,
basketball.
it would have
I
went to
couldn't
the
be less
alternating
interested. Listen to
possession
me.
arrow.
Shh, listen to me. I understand basically that if he hadn't called a technical foul just on you...
Or me.
Try receiving.
Okay.
If he hadn't called a technical foul just on you, but had called one on the other team too, it would have washed away both of them.
Right.
Is that right?
Right,
That's
exactly,
right.
Your Honor.
Shh. But he didn't.
Right.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Basketball referee Otis Frazier says team coach Darius Foster sucker punched him after a game. Darius says he thought Otis was going to hit him first.
Okay. So now you've got a technical foul because you ran out on the court and the game is over and your team loses.
Right.
Pick it up from there.
Okay. My team lost by the margin of the tech. I was very angry on it. Although I didn't say anything to Mr. Frazier or nobody else, I was upset because I knew that
I didn't know he was angry.
I knew that our season was over. I was putting my balls in the bag, and Mr. Frazier was coming through the score table. So he was walking to me as if he wanted to shake my hand or whatever. And he said, man, good game. I'm sorry I had to make that call. I clearly say, man, you didn't have to make that call. You didn't have to make that call, and I pushed him. I was angry, I was frustrated, so I pushed him out of frustration. He backed up, took his jacket, and set it down. Then he turned to me as if he was going to retaliate from the push. And I don't know, later he said that he was coming to shake my hand.
Don't tell me what he later said.
Okay, I'm sorry, Your Honor. His hand came out to me, and I didn't know if he was coming as he wanted to shake my hand again, or was he retaliating.
So you punched him?
Yeah, I protected myself, Your Honor.
You did not. You acted in a very unsportsmanlike fashion, sir. You did not protect yourself. You used your hands first in a very unsportsmanlike way in front of other children, causing injury. Who are you?
I'm his wife. I'm his witness.
You're his witness to what?
To the whole situation.
He
that
told
was
me
there.
exactly his version of what happened. If I believe him, he's wrong. If I believe him, he's 150% wrong. He put his hands on somebody else in anger. He's 100% wrong. Not that I believe that that's the way it happened, because even he says in his answer that the plaintiff came over and extended his hand to say, good game. That's what he says.
Right.
That's what he says. And at that point, he put his hands on him. Wrong. Can't do that. But I don't necessarily believe that. I believe what happened just the way the plaintiff described, that he sucker punched him in the eye for no reason. He was not angry. He didn't lose the most important game. I mean, like $10 million is at stake in this game. You got to get your testosterone in check, sir. Judgment for the plaintiff and the amount requested, $5,000 for pain and suffering and injury. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
He kept coming after me, wanting to get back.
Parents and coaches feel that they can just treat basketball officials any way they want.
He kept swinging at me, missing, and I kept punching back to protect myself.
I hope this sends a message to everybody that you won't be getting away with it.
It definitely was more than I bargained for.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Lopez Martinez versus Musada. Step forward, please.
25-year-old receptionist, Laura Lopez, and her boyfriend, 29-year-old engineering specialist, Vince Martinez, are suing 45-year-old Venus Muzada. Laura claims Venus keyed her car in a parking lot.
Who was driving that day?
I was.
Were you in the car that day?
No.
You are owner of the car?
Yes.
So you can have a seat.
Thank you.
This incident took place, allegedly, when the two of you had some sort of a misunderstanding when you were in your car over a parking space.
Yes.
When you were either backing out of a space, trying to get into a space, and you say that she got angry, got out and keyed your car.
Yes.
She says she was angry, but she never did that. Where did this happen?
In the parking lot of my job.
Is that the same place where you work?
No.
What were you doing there?
I was there to make up my car payment in that building.
Were you in a parking space that day?
No, I was waiting for her, I'm assuming it was her husband, to back out, and I was going to take the parking spot.
Who was in the car with you?
My friend. It's not my husband, it's my friend.
Who was driving?
He was driving, I was the passenger.
So what happened?
I was coming back from lunch at 12:30 on February 16th. Noticed that he had his reverse lights on. I parked, waiting for him to back out so I could take the parking. He backed out, tried to come out. When he put it back into drive, he almost hit my car. When he passed by me...
Did you park in front of him, or were you behind him waiting?
No, we were actually facing each other. When he backed out, I was already here.
So you weren't really giving him a lot of room?
There's plenty of room. I have pictures of the parking lot to show
Okay.
that there's plenty of room.
So he's backing out, and you're standing there waiting to pull into his spot?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Puts it in drive, almost hits my car, pulls up, passes me. On the verge of passing me, we exchanged words.
What kind of words?
I called him an effing.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Go ahead.
He passed me. I parked, got out of the car, got all my stuff, started walking out. They came in reverse. Her window was down. She asked me, what did I say? I said, you heard me. She said I was a stupid. I said, fine, kept on going. I thought they were leaving. They put the car back in drive. They drove away. When I turned around, I noticed that their car had turned. I went into my building, dropped off my purse, came back out to have a cigarette, noticed that they had turned around again, doing like a figure 8, parked directly behind my car, now blocking my car in. I went to the stairs, and I have pictures of the stairs to show where I was at. Noticed her get out of her car with her keys, went from the gas tank of the driver's side all the way up to the front fender. I stepped down to see who it was, what she was doing, just to make sure. When I stepped down, I noticed that she was now turning around with the keys back into her pocket, got back into the car. I went to the back of the car, got the license plate, the make, the model, went back in and called the police.
Okay. Now I'll hear you.
Okay, we were at this building. I'm making my payment for my car payment. We didn't took long to back up the parking space because we were talking about where to eat lunch.
Okay.
And then when my friend backed up already, she was cursing to us. So she did say bad words. And then I told my friend to back up. So she parked already on that space. And then I asked her, what did you say? And then I called her names because she called names too.
Was she in her car at the time? And you were in the car?
I
You were
was
both
in the car, and then she went out already from her car.
She was going in towards the building?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And then we left already after that.
You left?
Yeah.
You just pulled right out of the parking lot?
And then after a week, detective called me, went to my old apartment. I was there at the time visiting my sister.
I'm not interested in visiting your sister. You got contacted by the police. So
And
it's
then-
your story that you backed up, you asked her what she said, you may have said a bad word to her, and then you just left, and she walked into her building. Is that right?
I don't know where did she go.
I don't know. How would I know? I don't know when she would have had time to write down my license plate number. You think she wrote down your license plate number when she was driving her car and she was pulling into the space? You think she wrote down your license plate number for any reason then?
I don't have
And then
any
you got out
idea.
of the car. Listen to me. Then you say she got out of her car and just walked past you and walked right into her building, right? And then you just drove away.
Yeah.
Right? Then
I
you
did.
just drove away. So let us assume, madam, that nothing happened to her car. When do you think she would have written down your license plate number and the make and model of your car?
I don't know, maybe if she was still standing there and then...
How could she be still standing there? You just told me you pulled out of the parking lot and left. Isn't that what you just told me?
Yes.
Boom. There is no way, Ms. Lopez, that you would have taken down a license plate number and the make and model of the car and called it into the police unless her car had still been in the parking lot at the time she said she drove off, right? Because you were on your way to work. You were going into work. But for the fact that you turned around and saw her car still in the parking lot doing these little wheelies, you would have thought nothing of it. Right?
Right.
But she didn't figure that out when she was telling me the story. Because otherwise you wouldn't take down a license plate number on a car. There would have been no reason for it. You had a few words and she was off.
Right.
Right. I didn't think women did this road rage thing. Did your insurance pay for any of this?
No.
Okay.
I have a $500 deductible, and I can't come up with $500 to get it fixed.
Well, you understand that you're suing her for $5,000, which includes your emotional distress. Your emotional distress isn't worth that kind of money. Do you understand that?
Right.
All right, so that's nonsense.
Right.
You have a $500 deductible, so your out-of-pocket is $500. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $500. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Washington, his girlfriend, Michelle Hastings, and Michelle's mother, Brenda Hastings. She claims they owe her for unpaid rent and credit card charges. Michelle and Charlie are countersuing for damages to their car.
Order. All rise. Yeah, this is case number 346 on the calendar in the matter of Miller versus Hastings, Washington. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Folks, have seats, please.
Who are you?
Brenda Hastings. I'm Michelle's mother.
How old is Michelle?
17.
Okay. Miss Miller, Michelle is your son's girlfriend.
Yes, ma'am.
This is your son.
Yes, ma'am.
So you're really suing your son and his girlfriend. Her mother is here because she's a minor.
Yes, ma'am.
It appears from what I've read that you decided to rent a house. You were
Yes,
separating from your husband or something like that.
Yes, ma'am.
And that your son and his girlfriend said that they wanted to come and live with you. You say that this didn't work out, but they owe you for back rent. They owe you for money that they put on your credit card. They have a counterclaim. And their counterclaim involves both of their cars, which they say that you took, you hid, and caused damage to.
No, ma'am.
So that's what the case is about. Very complicated. When did you decide to rent this house?
About the second week of September.
And what was the rent on the house?
$575 a month.
And what was your arrangement with your son and his girlfriend?
I had planned on moving. My husband and I were just going to separate for a little while to work out some differences. There was a duplex that I had been waiting on that was around the corner from the house. My 15-year-old son had told Charlie here that we were moving, and Charlie indicated to him that he needed a place to go. He was tired of the stuff at Brenda's house. I had talked to Charlie.
He had been living with you? Is that right? How old are you?
19.
I had talked to Charlie and told him that was fine. There was no mention of Michelle at the time. That came up later with Charlie saying that she don't really act like she acts, but she'll act better when she's not around her mother. I thought about it for a while, and I said, well, we'll give it a try.
And this is a lot of information that I really don't need.
Okay. Well, I went up and asked the landlord. The landlord said they were renting it.
Oh, okay, fine. So you decided to rent it, and you decided to let the two of them move in with you.
Right.
And what was the financial arrangement with them?
We would go on the rent 3 ways.
Did you discuss that with her mother?
No, ma'am.
And you knew she was 17?
Her mother had put her out. They wanted both. They had asked several times for both of these to put them out. And my young son here, Derek,
Miss Miller,
can tell you.
That's not my question. My question was, you knew that Michelle was 17.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Michelle cannot enter into a contract with you because she's a minor. So if you did not have an agreement with her mother to pay a third of the rent, you cannot sue Michelle for a third of any rent that you believe she owes you. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's do away with that. So let's deal with your son. Did your son give you any money towards the rent?
No, ma'am.
Yes,
He gave
I
me
did.
$150 to help put on deposits on the utilities.
So he gave you $150?
Yes, ma'am.
How long did they live in the house?
6 weeks.
3
weeks. 6 weeks.
And when did you move out of the house?
The 28th.
Of September?
Yes, ma'am.
Charlie did not move out of that house until the 10th of October.
I moved out the 28th.
You stayed there. You
September.
were on the run from the police.
Shh, just a second. Miss Miller,
Yes, ma'am.
what rent do you believe your son owes you?
For him and Michelle, then should have been half of the $575.
No. Miss Miller, he's supposed to pay a third of the rent, right?
Right. But I have a 15-year-old at home that these two here complained what was his part of the rent because he was getting child support.
Did you move in with another child?
The 15-year-old moved in shortly after these two did. He didn't stay there all the time, but he was there.
What about you? Did you move in?
I didn't move in until the 24th of
September. September?
No, August. Oh, no, it was September. I'm sorry. I didn't even stay there half of the time.
Miss
Stayed
Miller,
maybe a whole week
Miss
out of
Miller,
it.
did you move in August 24th or September 24th?
September 24th.
Okay, well, let's go to the credit cards that you say that they used. How did they come to have possession of your credit cards?
They didn't have possessions. We had an agreement. I have a letter from the landlord because Mrs. Hastings was putting them out. We had an agreement to try to get the house livable for them to live in so they had a roof over their heads. And
You're talking about credit cards, Miss Miller. Let me hear about the credit cards money.
I put my credit cards, to get the house in order for them to live in, they had to have floors, they had to have cabinets, it had to have everything. The house was gutted out. It had to have everything.
So is that what was put on your credit card?
Yes.
So why do you think they should pay for that?
Because we're in agreement. Mrs. Hastings put them out.
Negative.
Stop saying Mrs. Hastings put them out. It doesn't make any difference whether she put them out or not. Now, am I correct?
It does
that
make a difference.
No,
Yes,
it doesn't make a
does.
difference legally.
Her mother put them out. He didn't have a place to go.
She
He
didn't
cannot
put
go
us
to
out.
my house that I own. My husband will not let him stay there. He's already ripped us off. He's breaking into the house. He's broken into the garage. He's not allowed on the property. Okay?
Miss Miller.
I did what I could to get him a roof over his head.
Miss
and I
Miller,
got
you're his
repaid.
mother. Listen to me. You're his mother.
Excuse me, ma'am. But this boy, I've got papers. This boy has been in and out of jail, detentions. He was stolen from me when he was 14 months old. I've got legal documents, Charlie, to prove it all.
Miss Miller.
He's on drugs. I've tried for years to get him help, okay?
Miss Miller, listen to me. I understand that you have a frustration with him.
If you
And
helped
from-
him out as much as I have in a lifetime, you would too.
Miss Miller, listen to me. If Miss Hastings allowed your son to come and live in her house with her 17-year-old daughter, then she's got rocks in her head and probably decided she had had enough. Bottom line, that's your son. It's not her son. And if she had had enough of him and was putting him out, and her daughter Michelle says, I'm not staying here without him, then she says, you want to go with him? Go with him.
He's been living there with her since she was 15 and he was 17.
You want to know something?
And she's put him out 3 times.
Miss
And
Miller.
I have been there.
Miss
Charlie.
Miller. Miss Miller.
Yeah, okay.
Miss Miller.
Yes, ma'am.
This is your son. And if she's put him out 3 times, and if he was living there from the time he was 17 years old, it had to have been because you and your husband put him out.
Exactly.
No, he left
Exactly.
on his... No, you left on your own
Miss
because
Miller,
you
don't
were
talk
on
to him.
drugs, Charlie.
Miss
You were
Miller,
selling drugs
1, 2,
out of my
3.
house.
Miss Miller.
And I called the police
Put her
on you.
outside.
That's why you left.
Put her outside. I'm going to let you cool off outside, Miss Miller.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Latina Miller says her son Charlie Washington, his girlfriend Michelle Hastings, and Michelle's mother Brenda owe for rent and repairs to her home.
Miss Miller, you can't talk to your son. This is not time for you to shout at your son when you're in a court. Time to do that is when you had him in therapy when he was 7 years old. If your son had been giving you problems and moved out of your house, whether you put him out of your house or whether he left voluntarily, you knew where he was living with the Hastings family and their daughter. That was probably a major error on their part. Some people do that. I never quite understand why they've taken somebody else's problem into their home. But be that as it may, if you decided that you wanted to put a roof over your son's head as his mother, that's what your job is. That kind of unconditional love is what you do for a child, even if they drive you crazy. Are you currently living in the house?
No, ma'am.
Did you decide to go back to your husband?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that where you are now?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that where you're going to stay, you think?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about the cars. You took your son's car out of impound?
I paid to get it out, yes, ma'am.
What'd you do with it?
Set it in my backyard.
And what happened to it?
It sat there until the day that he came and threatened me. And then I took it down on the corner where I told him and the police officer that I would set it and left the keys in it, that in the Nissan.
And somebody stole it?
I don't know.
Well, it wasn't found on the corner, is that right?
I don't know where they found it at.
Where did you find your car?
I found mine in a ditch on Orville Smith.
It was not in a ditch. I got pictures of where I left it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So what you're saying is somebody took the car after you left it there with the keys in it. Why'd you leave it there with the keys in it?
There was no keys in it.
There was keys in it.
Crazy.
When you left it, the keys were in it. So I'm asking you, why did you leave it with the keys in the car?
He came, he harassed me. I didn't want him on the property. And for him to come get the keys, then he would have to come on the property. And I talked to him in the back of the police car and told him.
What were the police doing there?
I called him because he threatened me.
When did he threaten you?
When he came to the house.
Was this after he had moved out of the rental house?
No, he was in jail. He had just gotten out October 31st, and I didn't know he was out of jail.
What was he in jail for?
Theft of property from an auto and breaking and entering of an auto.
What were you in jail for?
Assault the third.
He was also in jail for that.
Assault the third.
Who did you assault?
My girlfriend.
You ever arrested for breaking and entering?
Yes, ma'am.
When?
In 97.
What about auto theft?
Yes, ma'am.
So you got his car out of impound, you told the police he had threatened you, you were taking the car, you were parking it at the corner, you were leaving the keys in the car, and that's the last you know of the car.
Yes, ma'am.
And you found the car when you got out of jail, sir?
I did.
Where did you find it?
It's on Orville Smith Road. She parked it in the edge of the woods.
No, she doesn't park it anywhere. You found it there. You didn't see
found it there.
You found it there.
I got out and I looked and I turned around and I went back to my house. And I brought him down there and he couldn't find no keys nowhere in the car.
Well, maybe somebody who stole the car took the keys after they finished joyriding in the car. What about your car?
Well, my mother and my father found it in a hayfield.
What makes you think that Miss Miller took your car?
Because she stole the keys out of my purse. I didn't have it in my possession.
No, I did not steal the keys from her purse. This key goes to a car of Charlie's that he has in their yard. I don't know if it runs or not, but it was sent this key ring with this key. And when I talked to Charlie on the phone after he had beat up Michelle, he told me one of them keys went to the car. And that's how I got the car.
So what did you do with the car?
Charlie explained for me to take the car to my house and park it and not to let Michelle have the car.
You mean her car?
No, it's his car. It's legally in his name.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Is your car, the car that you're talking about, that you're suing over, in whose name is that car titled?
His.
You have two cars titled in your name?
Yes, ma'am.
What year cars are they?
94 and 87.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I was working at Arby's.
At Arby's? Who bought the cars?
I bought one, she bought one. But she wasn't old enough to put it in her name, so I signed for it.
Why didn't her mother sign for it?
Because they went and got it without me. I was at work. They went looking at cars. They picked out one and she bought it.
Miss Hastings,
Yes.
is he still living in your house?
He is right now, yeah.
You had him arrested for beating up your daughter. You've thrown him out of your house at least 3 times.
No.
He left your house 3 times in the last 2 years. You took him into his house,
He has
into
been
your
in the
house when he
house
was
a year.
17 years old. Since he was 17 years old, he's been arrested several times, according to him, for a variety of things. Breaking and entering, auto theft, assaulting your daughter. Would you kindly tell me what kind of medication you're on? Because I want to take some. If you don't see that he's not right for her.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Bettina Miller says her son Charlie Washington, his girlfriend Michelle Hastings, and Michelle's mother Brenda owe for rent and repairs to her home.
Miss Hastings, he's not right for her.
He may not be right for her, but everybody has to make their own choices. And
hey. Everybody has to make their own choices once they're an adult. Until you're an adult, your parents help you make those choices, and they don't do things that encourage you to make bad choices.
Well, Tina has put her son out several times.
Tina's son is a bum. Was your daughter a bum when she was 15?
No, my daughter was in school when she was 15.
Is she still in school?
She's going to night classes.
No. Before she met him, she was in school.
Yeah, but she...
After she met him, she's not in school.
Had nothing to do with him.
Oh, listen, Miss Miller.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to give you some words of advice. Is this the first child that you've had that's been in trouble?
Yes, ma'am.
You think you know how to deal with it now?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me how you're dealing with it.
I work with the best I can.
My advice to you is you be there as a backup in case of an emergency, in case something bad happens. But until he grows up and stops doing things that are both harmful to himself, to the people that care about him, and to you, he's going to have to make his own mistakes. If you put yourself in a financial position where you've stretched your finances, it's a foolish thing to do. Because what will happen is he will never be forced to grow up. You tell me you put him out of the house, or he left the house when he was 15. The Hastings took him in. And when the Hastings decided to put him out, you provided a roof over his head. He's never had to grow up and face responsibility. Had 2 cars titled in his name, working at Arby's.
Well, he didn't buy the car. The Firebird was given to him as a gift by me and my husband. I did not put him out of the house. He had a choice. He could go to jail or he could go back to Michigan to his dad. He took off on his own. He was on the run. We did look for him. He stayed with a friend of his up in a trailer, drinking, getting high. The owner of the trailer came to our house, wanted to know what was up. We went up there. He was gone.
Okay. Miss Hastings, I've already told you what I think of the fact that you allowed him to move back into your house after he beat up your daughter. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Absolutely the dumbest. And if your daughter wants to be dumb enough to take off with him, as you said, people make their own choices, but you're making it real comfortable for her to do things that ultimately are going to be devastating.
It doesn't matter in what they have done. I mean, it's the car situation. It's her having them to move into a rental house because her marriage, she moved back.
Listen to me. I'm not dealing with your lawsuits. Both of your lawsuits are nonsense. Hers, she cannot convince me that her son owes her any money. With regard to the cars, you have no proof whatsoever that your mother took your car, put it in a ditch. She says that after an argument with you, she told the police, I'm putting the car on the street corner with the keys in it. I don't want him anywhere near my house. A reasonable explanation is that somebody walked by, saw the keys in the car, took it for a joyride, and trashed it. I think that both of you, but especially you, Miss Hastings, I don't understand you at all. What do you do all day, sir?
Now,
Now.
go to school
No, you don't.
at night.
I asked you what you did during the day. Don't tell me that you go to school at night. What do you do all day?
Hunt for jobs.
Hunt for jobs. Michelle, what do you do all day?
Work.
Where?
At Walmart.
You work 5 days a week?
8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
And you come home and he's watching TV? Michelle, look at me. You come home and he's watching TV?
I don't know what he does during the day.
Michelle, before you get pregnant, get smart. You'll be working at Walmart, 9 months pregnant, and he's going to be sitting home playing with Nintendo that you will have bought him for Christmas. Get smart. Cases are dismissed.
29-year-old payroll clerk Rebecca Moore for unpaid credit card charges. Nancy says the payment stopped when her son rebuffed Rebecca's advances.
Come to order. All rise. Your Honor, this is case number 441 on the calendar in the matter of Griffin versus Moore.
Thank you, Bert.
Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Folks, have seats.
According to your complaint, you and the defendant met when I believe her husband and your son were incarcerated together.
Yes, ma'am.
Your complaint alleges that you developed a friendship and you allowed the defendant to charge certain items on your credit card with the agreement that she would repay you or pay the bill as it came in. Initially she did, then she stopped. And you allege that when she stopped paying, she owed you $842.
That's correct, Your Honor.
So when did you first meet the defendant?
I think approximately about a year ago. My son was incarcerated, and he was her husband's roommate. So we became good friends, and we would go shopping at the Avenue, and every time she would charge anything, she was so good about paying it. I mean, it was probably most of the time before it even became due. When my son got out of incarceration, she had a type of attraction to my son. It became almost impossible for me to have conversations with her because I did not want to be in the middle.
Your Honor, that's not the truth.
Just a second.
And after a lot of harassing phone calls, I had asked to quit because I couldn't take it anymore. Then at that time, she refused to pay for what was left to be owed on my credit cards.
What was left?
This is the deposits of as far back as we started this. These are all that she's charged, all she's paid, what she owes is left.
So she paid on time until October?
Yes, ma'am, till the end of October.
Okay, now I'll hear you.
What she said is correct as far as our friendship. Her son was incarcerated with my husband. When things went bad was because her son had a drug problem. And I tried to help him.
Your Honor, this is irrelevant.
Just a second.
Her son asked me for a ride to the interstate. I took him to my house instead of the interstate. Miss Griffin got to my house before we did. Basically, her son had took a video camera from her. She had searched her son's coat. She pulled out the camera. So then she left, and her son was still there with me. I then took her son to his girlfriend that lived in Charleston, and that's when his mother, she turned against me. She told me our friendship was over because I tried to help her son.
What date was that?
Ma'am, to be honest with you, I'm not sure.
Okay. She says that you did not pay the October bill, which
Ma'am,
is $800.
I have a check.
Which is $800. Listen to me.
Okay.
Which is $846.05.
Yes, ma'am, I understand
the October
that.
bill. Okay, let me see.
And I'm not denying that there were credit card charges. There were. I have a check from State Street Bank that was given, that it was a 401k check that I received from my employer. I have a copy of the front and back of that check that I gave her permission to go get out of my post office box and endorse and deposit into her account. She gave me $368 back.
May I see it, please?
And I have it where she endorsed my name and her name on the back. That's not my signature. Because at the time I was on a medical leave, she knew that my money was a little tight. I told her to take the check to pay for the bills because I never missed paying her.
I'm just trying to find the date on this, when she endorsed it.
It was on 10/27 on my, it's on, I think, the second or third page of my bank account statements. And you'll see right next to it where I cashed a check for the exact amount and gave it to Miss Moore at my home right in front of my husband. He'll be a witness to that.
Her husband has never been present.
Just a second.
We've made any charges or any money exchange.
Just a second. So what you're telling me, Miss Griffin, is that at the time your friendship was coming to an end, the defendant gave you a check, which you did in fact cash, in the amount of $1,012.99.
Yes, ma'am.
And you gave her the entire amount of money.
Yes, ma'am.
Doesn't make sense to me, Miss Griffin.
That weekend, Miss Moore came to my house.
Yeah.
I gave her the full amount of cash, handed it to her.
Right.
She said she wanted to give me $300 because she had a rainbow rental or something that was pressing and had to be paid. And she said when she got her check on Tuesday...
Let me see the rest of her papers, please.
When she got the rest of her check on Tuesday, that she would take care of the rest of it.
Your Honor, I could have...
And the whole time Miss Moore was out on disability...
Just a second.
I could have cashed that check myself.
I cashed her check because she did not have a bank account at that time. I took care of things for her. She had some drug problem, and she tried to commit suicide.
Not interested in that.
Well,
Your
I mean,
Honor,
I
that
was
is
there
not true. I
taking
just
care
read
of her.
police
I
reports
didn't want to turn my back on her.
Your Honor, that is...
Were there any witnesses present to the transfer of this $1,012 to Miss Moore
My
on the
husband, Michael
27th?
Griffin, was there.
Is he here?
Yes,
Your
ma'am.
Honor, he
There,
was never
Michael.
present during any of these things.
Just a second.
It was just me and her.
Go ahead.
Mrs. Moore wanted to meet with my wife at our home because whoever she was seeing for therapeutic reasons told her to come to closure between Kevin and Nancy. And I was standing right there in my bedroom. She was sitting in the blue chair to the left of my bed when Nancy handed her $1,012 and change, and Rebecca handed her back $300 to deposit in Nancy's account.
No, ma'am, that is not true. Mr.
And-
Griffin was never
Now,
present
just a
during
second.
any of these transactions.
Just a second. I don't see whether she was given credit for the $300.
On the first page, every deposit that she made to me is on the left. Every bill that I wrote to the Avenue or any of my other credit cards
So is what you're telling
to the right.
Is what you're telling me that at the time she made these purchases in October, she still had an outstanding bill to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor,
She made-
also Mrs. Griffin shopped along with me, and she had stuff on that bill as well, where our stuff was added together and not separately.
That's wrong, Your Honor. If you look at my receipts, I've been very careful, and she had one receipt, and I had one receipt.
Always a big mistake.
Your Honor, and
You know, you understand this is always a big mistake to do.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay. Miss Griffin, who it appears over an extended period of time, had been very good to you financially by allowing you to make these purchases when you didn't have the cash to do it.
Yes, ma'am.
But all of a sudden say that you have an outstanding bill to her of $846 when you didn't.
Your Honor, like I said, when our friendship separated, it was due to the fact that her son stole from me and he went to jail for a drug
That's
charge.
untrue, Your
And I
Honor.
have the police report here. That's when mine and her friendship went sour, because her son came to me. He asked me for help. He spent 3 days at my home when she didn't know where he was. When I told her that he had been at my home, she got very upset with me for not contacting her.
What date was that?
It was before Halloween.
11/3.
So it was after this?
No,
occurred.
this was the weekend prior to 11/3.
Was it before or after the $1,000 check was cashed
This was
by the plaintiff?
this was after.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. We were still
And-
very much a part of each other's lives at that time. She had continued to call. I said, please do not call me anymore. I got so upset that I wound up in the hospital on her last phone call.
Okay.
Your Honor,
I believe you, sir. Listen to me. I believe you, sir, when you indicate that $1,012 was passed. Were you present when $300 was given to your wife?
Yes, Your Honor.
How was that given?
In cash.
$100 bill?
Rebecca, pardon me, Your Honor. Rebecca handed back cash, $300 cash to Nancy.
Not true, Your Honor. That is not true. And I have somebody
You have
here
your
with-
bank records with you?
No, because at the time I did not have a bank account. She was correct about that. I did not have a bank account. But I could have cashed that check myself through my employer's bank.
But you didn't.
But I always cash
You
my
didn't.
checks by myself. She
You
never
said
did
you
it
had a
before.
witness. I'll hear your witness if your witness has anything germane. If he does.
Yes,
What is
ma'am.
your name?
Alan Young. I've been a friend of Rebecca's for 15 years. Rebecca asked me would I give her a loan of $300 because she owed Mrs. Griffith some money. She borrowed money from me that night because she said she had to pay on her rent or something. So I kind of believed her.
What is your rent, Ms. Moore?
$385.
Well, even if she took all the money she owed you, you still had the $300 for rent.
I understand
So why did
that.
you need to borrow money from him for?
Because I had additional bills that I owed for besides paying her. But I wanted to pay her and have her out of the way because I always paid her before the bills were due.
Do you have the statement from your account, Ms. Griffin, as to what payments you made on the account in November?
Yes, ma'am, that would be right in those payments there. I'll be glad
I
to
see.
show
You
them to
made
them.
a deposit on the 30th of October.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, she was paid in full when she received that check.
No, ma'am, I was not.
Yes, you were.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so because I see no other basis for her depositing only $300 into her checking account on the 30th
Well, Your
of
Honor,
October.
I can't help if that's the only thing she deposited. She was paid.
I have to make a determination based upon evidence. The evidence indicates that on or about the time that that check was cashed, she did deposit $300 into her account. So I'm entering a judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $842. That's all.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
She is married, and at the time I had a fiance.
I lost a friendship on kind of her son's drug problem.
She knew that, and she was still coming on to me.
She can't rule everybody.
And now the next case.
All parties on Gregorian versus Scaturio. Step forward, please.
23-year-old cashier Mariam Gregorian is suing former live-in boyfriend, 23-year-old salesman Scott Scaturio, for his share of a security deposit. Scott is countersuing for the cost to rent a U-Haul, storage costs, and harassment.
Ms. Gregorian, you and the defendant lived together. Were you boyfriend and girlfriend at the time? According to your complaint, you had an arrangement with the defendant that since he had no money, you would put down the security deposit on the apartment, and he was to reimburse you for half.
For half, yes.
And half of the security deposit was $600?
Yes.
And you also say that the time that you left the apartment, because he was threatening, you gave him an additional $200.
For April's month's rent, yes.
So he says that you actually owe him money because he was forced, as a result of your leaving, to hire a U-Hauler to take all of his furniture out. Is that right?
Correct.
And that was not the agreement, that you were going to reimburse her for half of the security deposit. Your agreement was she would pay for the security deposit, first, last, etc., and you would pay for the household furnishings and all of the household appliances.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
When did you move in together?
We moved in February 1st together.
And when did you leave the apartment?
April 2nd.
And you would have an argument at that time?
Yes, we did.
Okay. So you were ready to call it quits, and you were ready to call it quits, I assume.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
Now, you agree that she did put down this $1,200.
The $1,200, correct.
And to fulfill your part of the obligation, you purchased all the furniture.
Correct.
And you purchased all the appliances.
Correct.
In the U-Haul that you hired, did you put all the furniture?
Yes.
And did you put all the appliances that you purchased?
Yes.
Did she take any of the furniture?
No.
Did she take any of the appliances?
No, ma'am.
Well, so then let's understand this. On the one side, she put down the $1,200. You purchased all the stuff, but you have all the stuff.
Correct.
Right? She's out the $1,200, including half that should be yours, right?
No, because that wasn't the agreement.
Well, the understanding was that if she put down, according to you, that if she put down the $1,200, your capital contribution to the apartment would be, I assume, purchasing furniture and appliances about the same amount of money, $1,200.
Correct.
Did you spend $1,200?
About that, maybe a little more.
But you have it. You didn't say to her, I'll give you half, right?
Correct.
Why not?
Because the agreement was before we even took the apartment that if anything should happen to the relationship, that we would at least stay as roommates in the apartment.
Nobody stays on as roommates. That's stupid. In any event, sir, I don't believe you had that conversation. So what I'm asking you is, let's talk about money. Let's say you spent $1,200 on furniture, appliances. She spent $1,200, right? Each of you should be out $600. That's math. I'm not really good at math. But am I making myself clear to you, Bird?
Very.
Right. So you got $1,200 worth of furniture and appliances. That's on your side. But you kept it. Now, you want to give her $600, you want to give her half the furniture?
I'm not going to give her half the furniture.
So that's $600 for you. Now tell me about this $200.
The $200 was April 2nd when I left. He told me I owe him April's rent. And I felt that I didn't need to because it was April 2nd. It wasn't a complete month yet. I didn't need to give him anything.
But you did?
But I did, because at the time that he had a spare key to my car, and he told me that he would hide my car if he needed to until I gave him the money. And I took the $200 and I basically threw it at him.
So, cheap price, $200. You don't get that back. You get your $6, because I believe that that was your agreement. Now, you hired a U-Haul. Why didn't you stay in the apartment?
Because due to her leaving, I couldn't afford the apartment on my own.
Well, just a minute. How much was the rent?
$600 a month.
And she had already given you $2 for April.
She had not given me $2 for April. During the argument, she actually opened her closet, which she already had her stuff packed, and just left.
She didn't give you an additional $200?
No, I left the apartment before she even finished taking her stuff out.
Really?
Your Honor, that's not true because we were fighting and there was a person on the phone. He was speaking to his mother and a friend of his, telling them how I started out being a psychopath. He sat there and watched me leave and pack up.
What date did you move out?
I believe it was the first week in May.
You stayed for the entire month of April.
Yes.
So you lived there. She didn't, right?
Correct.
So you pay for it. And then you had to move because of the rent. Where did you move to?
I'm actually staying with my sister right now.
Okay, you paying any rent there?
No.
Well, look at it this way. You spent $300 for a U-Haul.
Approximately, yes.
That would have been your share of the $300 worth of rent, right?
Correct.
And you couldn't afford the apartment anyway, right? So, and you got all that nice furniture. So what are you complaining about?
Your Honor, can I say something?
No, I want to ask him I want to find out what he's complaining about.
Actually, what I'm complaining about is, Your Honor, she stated in the police report, actually, when she filed for court, that I threatened her life and I threatened to do her harm. She actually, I have mail here, which she had actually forwarded to my sister's address. If I was threatening her life, I don't understand why she would forward mail to my sister's address where she knows that I go, when I also have police reports stating that they heard messages of her threatening to kill me, etc., etc.
Well, let me see the letter that you have, sir. I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but let me take a look at it.
I forwarded the mail to her sister's address because at the time when I had nowhere to go, she offered to take me in. That's why I did it.
Whatever. It's really not dispositive of anything. All right, you owe $600. Your counterclaim is dismissed. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $600. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I don't feel like I owe him anything.
Should have broke even. Nobody should have been.
And 44-year-old business owner Douglas Self for the cost of their father's funeral. Tina and Douglas say they never agreed to pay.
Order. All rise. Comfy?
Yes, I am now.
Okay. Yeah, this is case number 560 on the calendar in the matter of Selb versus Selb Stamper. Parties have been sworn in. Judge, you may be seated. Sir, have a seat, please.
Miss Selb.
Yes.
You were married to the defendant's father, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
For 7 years.
Almost 7 years. Yes, ma'am.
He died.
Yes, ma'am.
It is your claim that the defendants agreed to reimburse you for the costs of cremating your husband.
Yes, ma'am.
They say that there was never such an agreement. When did your husband pass away?
I cannot hear you.
When did your husband pass away?
He passed away of October 6th last year.
Was his passing away sudden?
No, ma'am.
He had been ill for a period of time?
Only my son was there.
Okay, let's try it on this side. Was your father ill for a long time?
I would say yes.
What do you mean you would say yes?
He had open heart surgery in 1994 and among many other illnesses, and I don't think he ever recuperated, if that's
From
what you
his
mean.
open heart surgery?
Right.
Were you notified as soon as he passed away?
He passed away at 2 o'clock in the morning, and Natalie called me the next, early, about 8:30 the next
Was he
morning.
home or was he in the hospital?
He was in the hospital.
How long had he been in the hospital?
It was 2 days prior.
To his passing.
She called you 2 days before. Did you go to see him?
No.
She told us not to.
She told us not to bother coming up there.
She has no right to do that. And if she did, I would assume that you would just disregard that and go and see your father anyway.
She requested us that we did not come up there.
Then you disregard that request and you go see your father.
She said that he was not, there was no plans for actually that he was going to survive the evening.
Even more reason for you to get there. Did you see your father regularly?
A few times a year.
And you?
Natalie made it very difficult for us to see our father. She called me in 1998 and told me that I was never welcome in her home again. So my visits with my father had to be over the phone. I was not welcome in her home.
All right, Miss Selb, would you tell me the conversation that you allegedly had with these children about their reimbursing you for the cost of your husband's cremation?
On October 21st, they came over to pick up some of my husband's heirlooms. They also want to have the ashes. I told Tina that I have paid $1,200 for it, and she said she will reimburse the money. All I have to do is just send the bill.
I never said that.
I have sent the bill with a letter. I didn't hear anything from her.
Just a minute. At that time, did you give her the ashes?
Yes, they took the ashes when they left.
Was there any funeral service for your husband?
No, there was just at the park, you know, people have got together and had dinner and stuff like that. And I have asked them, but they didn't want to come.
But they came to the house to pick up some property, is that right?
Yes. That's correct.
And you picked up your father's ashes?
Yes.
Tell me under what circumstances this lady gave you the ashes.
We went up to get my dad's war mementos and our family photo albums, all that was left of that my father had. And there was never a discussion about taking the ashes home. I mean, that wasn't why we went up there.
Okay.
She presented a carton as we were leaving of his ashes, and we were both very surprised by that. There was never a discussion about reimbursing for ashes or giving her money for the cremation, and then we can exchange, you know, pay this ransom for my father's ashes and we could leave with it. Never a discussion about that. The ashes were there. She presented it to us along with a copy of what appears to be his will, and we left. That was that.
Miss Selb, why did you give them your husband's ashes?
Why did I do what?
Why did you give them your husband's ashes?
Because Doug asked for it.
Because they asked for it?
Yes.
And you had no problem with that?
Well, I mean, I didn't want to divide it, ma'am. You know, so I said, okay, you go ahead and take it. Because Tina told me that she's going to reverse the money.
Well, when you decided to have him cremated, you didn't speak to her with regard to the costs. Is that right?
She told me also that whatever I do is okay with her, and she also talked to my son.
That's not true.
At the hospital.
That's absolutely not true.
At the where?
At the hospital. When my husband was in the hospital, she called. My son was in the hospital when she called when my husband was sick.
Step up. Tell me. Not proper court attire.
Sorry.
So you should have something important to say. I assume you do.
Basically, I was there when he went into the hospital and when he died.
And when did you have a conversation with Tina?
I had conversations with them at least, each of them at least twice.
Go ahead, let me hear about the conversation.
You know, they were asking what was going on with their father and, you know, what do the doctors think? And I said, they don't really know. They pretty much think he's going to die or they're not going to do much about it. And then they told me that they weren't able to get up there. So we went in the next morning and made arrangements to have him cremated. They left it in the hands of my mother to take care of.
Were there any death benefits under Social Security?
I believe the $225 that they give for when somebody dies, Social Security, that was about it. And then
$225 for burial costs?
yeah, that's what the Social Security system will pay.
Okay, well, that's $225.
Correct.
Even that, your lawsuit is $1,200, which is the entire cost of cremation, right?
Yes.
Is there a will?
Your Honor, my father had an estate when he married Natalie. And I have here a record of every single thing that my father had and things that show, as far as I'm concerned, that he had an estate that more than paid for funeral expenses.
Plus his wishes to be buried.
He wanted to be buried whole next to my mother, who died in 1983. He already had a plot. He already had his wishes known. She knew them. She and I discussed this. When he died, she knew that we did not want him cremated and that he didn't want to be cremated.
How long was he married to your mother?
37 years.
When did she pass away?
1983. I hired Natalie to be his housekeeper.
I think an important point.
Go ahead.
I think an important point is that when my father was ill, we hired Natalie, my sister actually hired Natalie to take care of him. And in a 6-week period, they were married and she produced a license with his name on it. And
her license.
With her name on it and my father's name. And at that point, a bank that had all his funds and monies called us up, my sister, which was the power of attorney at the time, and said there's something funny going on. This woman is here and she's liquidating or
closing all of his accounts.
Closing all of his accounts, getting all the funds out of his accounts. At that point, we contacted my father, and that's when he said, well, we just happened to get married.
Okay. Miss Sell, after you married Mr. Sell,
Yes.
were you working anyplace else?
Before I started working for him?
For the last 7 years, since you were married to their father, you didn't work at all outside the home?
That was a full-time job with Mr. Selb.
Fine. So you didn't work at all outside the home?
No, ma'am.
Is that right? How were you supported?
We lived on his retirement and my Social Security.
How much was your Social Security?
My Social Security, $472.
And how much was his pension?
His pension was $1,200, something like that.
And how much was his Social Security?
5 something.
So you had Social Security of $400, and he had about $1,700 a month. Is that right?
Right, ma'am.
Okay. And he had savings as well. Is that right?
Yes.
Of course. Where are his savings?
The savings?
Yeah.
We spent most of it.
Do you have any left?
We have traveled quite a bit, ma'am.
Oh, just a minute. Do you have any left of his savings?
Yeah, I have $2,000.
Good. That pays for the funeral. Thank you very much. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
The only thing I can say that I took care of their father for 7 years.
My sister went there a couple of weeks afterwards, and she found the mail actually had been sorted through and gone through, his financial statements gone through.
They wouldn't even answer the letters I have sent it to them.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Langlois, step forward.
51-year-old office manager Vicki Langlois is suing her ex-husband, 36-year-old operations manager Jim Langlois, for medical expenses for the family dog.
Miss Langlois, you and the defendant were married for 13 years. You were divorced officially, I believe, according to what I've read, in 1999?
Correct.
There was a dog.
Jim's dog.
Well, you say it was Jim's dog. There was a dog that lived in your house for a long time. The dog remained in your home. The dog became ill. You took the dog to the vet.
Correct.
There was substantial expenses for the dog in the amount of $1,817. The dog was ultimately put to sleep, and you want the defendant to pay those veterinarian bills.
Correct.
Okay, so I will hear you on why you think he is responsible for those bills.
When he left in March of '99, he moved into a studio apartment where there was no pets allowed. I was left with the dog to care for it. Then, March of 2000, the dog became ill. I talked to Jim, and I explained to him everything that happened. He didn't disagree with how I handled it. I told him I would not be able to pay the bills, and he said that was okay, and he'd take care of it. So I had brought the dog home with the understanding that I would have to give the dog intravenous feedings twice a day, which I did until April 25th, when he suddenly turned worse. I called Jim. I told him he wanted to see the dog. I brought the dog to him, and he returned the dog to me, and the next day the dog even got worse. I called the vet. She said there's nothing more we can do for him.
How old was the dog?
12 years. And
how old is your son?
12.
So that the dog had been your son's companion as well.
Yeah, his best friend.
Okay, go ahead.
And so Thursday night, the 27th, I believe it was, I called Jim at work. When I tried to discuss what was going on with the dog, he just wanted to talk about the divorce and all the other property issues that were going on. And he got abusive, and he wasn't even listening to me. I was telling him that Saturday morning was the appointment, and he got abusive and was swearing at me, and I hung up the phone. On Saturday morning, my daughter Kendra took me and our 12-year-old son to the vet, and we sat there with him while the dog was put down. Later, I talked to Jim about the money, and he said we would have to discuss it at the divorce hearing in June. When we got to the divorce hearing, his attorney asked that the two attorneys could talk outside of the courtroom and discuss some of the issues.
The outstanding financial issues.
Right, and the dog was one of them. My attorney said that Jim was denying it was his dog, and that I shouldn't waste $250 an hour. I should take it to of his time. I should take it to small claims court, and that's what I did.
It is clear to me, Mrs. Langlos, that your 12-year-old son would have been devastated had his father left the house, and in addition to leaving the house, taken his dog. According to you, the dog was his best friend.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't that you were dog sitting for the defendant's dog. You kept the dog because it was the family dog. Whoever purchased it, paid for it. I have a dog. When she's a very, very good dog, my husband says it's his dog. When it poops in the house, it's my dog. The issue of whose dog it is not relevant to this. Your former wife claims that you indicated to her that you would, at one point, take care of the veterinary bills. Let us assume for the moment that you did say to her, I'll take care of it, whatever the bills are. And I don't even have to make a judgment on that. There did come a time that you went to the Supreme Court to resolve all issues of money involving your marriage. According to you, Miss Langlos, the issue of the dog's bills was raised by the attorneys in that proceeding.
Outside of the judge. Right.
Doesn't make any difference.
Correct.
It was part of the negotiation. You did the right thing by keeping the dog and taking care of the dog. Your problem, Mrs. Langlos, is this. There must be finality when parties divorce. And that is usually as of the day that a final judgment of divorce is rendered. Everybody is there, and they throw all the marbles on the table, and they say, listen, this is what we got. This is what our bills are. This is what our expenses are. This is what our assets are. We're going to divide them. We're going to divide them in an equitable fashion, and that's what you pay a lawyer for. That was clearly done. So all of that was before the court, or should have been before the court. Now, you understand that, Mrs. Langlos. I know that from the way you're shaking your head, you understand that. Because ultimately, each of you has to know, this is the date that my financial obligations are fixed, both for child support, for maintenance, for alimony, for outstanding credit cards, for outstanding bank loans. You can't keep this thing going forever. It's not healthy.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
According to you, and I'm just taking what you tell me, your attorney did in fact raise the issue at that time. You were given bad advice by your attorney. If your attorney did indeed say to you, deal with it later, that's very bad advice, because your marriage terminated and these bills were incurred prior to the stipulation and settlement and the judgment of divorce. Unless your former husband believes that you should voluntarily contribute to the dog's vet bills, he is under no legal obligation to do so. Just for my own sake, you want to tell me, Mr. Langlos, how much you pay in child support for your son?
I believe it's $961 a month.
Do you pay maintenance to your former wife, in addition to the child support?
Yes.
And how much do you pay in maintenance?
1,000 something.
It's a little over 1,000, 1,027.
Are you currently current in your child support and maintenance?
Yes, my child support and spousal support comes directly out of my work check.
Do you see your son? Visit him?
Not now, I don't.
Why not?
We have issues that we're working out through court right now.
So there are ongoing issues of visitation?
Mm-hmm.
So you're still paying lawyers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am. She's not. She doesn't have a lawyer at this time. I do.
Well, that's unfortunate.
No, that's not true. I do have a lawyer.
Yeah. Okay. Whether you have
But
a
yes,
lawyer,
we are.
I have his letter that says
whether you
he's-
have a lawyer or not, it's really unfortunate that you can't put a period and start having some sort of normalcy to your lives. That's really very unfortunate.
Fair.
In any event, Ms. Langlos, all financial issues were resolved in your case in June of 2000, so your lawsuit is dismissed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Parties are excused.
Pacheco for the cost of their father's bail and legal fees.
Order. All rise. Now, this is case number 536 on the calendar in the matter of Pacheco versus Pacheco. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Gentlemen, have seats.
All right, there's a rather complicated fact pattern in this case, so let me see if I understand it. The defendant is your brother.
Yes.
About 2 years ago, your brother had just been released from jail and came to live in your father's home.
Yes.
This is your father?
Yes, it is.
Within a day or so after his release, a probation officer came to the house to check up on him, and the probation officer came unannounced.
Yes.
And that was a condition of your probation.
Yes.
What had you been in jail for?
Possession of methamphetamines?
Drugs.
Yes.
And when the probation officer arrived, the probation officer found your father smoking marijuana?
Yes, in his room, Your Honor.
And he was smoking marijuana because he was ill?
Yes.
And I understand he has now a card that indicates that he can use cannabis for medicinal purposes. Is that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
You have that card, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
At the time, he did not have that card.
No, ma'am.
So he was taken to jail?
Yes.
There were certain expenses surrounding his incarceration. You had to bail him out?
Yes.
You had to hire a lawyer?
Yes.
And you say that your brother agreed to repay you for these
Yes.
costs because, but for the fact that he was in the house, you felt as if he was responsible. The probation officer wouldn't have been there, your father wouldn't have been arrested, and you felt as if it was his fault.
Yes.
Would you step up, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
What's the nature of your illness, sir?
I have spinal stenosis, I have gout, I have arthritis, I have rheumatism.
How long did you spend in jail?
12 hours, something like that.
Before your daughter bailed you out?
Yes.
And how much did it cost to bail him out?
The bail was set at $8,000, so we had to put $800 down.
And you hired a lawyer?
Yes, ma'am.
And how much was the lawyer?
The lawyer was $2,500.
You have receipts for those two things?
Yes, I do. This is the bail receipt. And this is the attorney receipts. He sent the receipts on the letters. He sent letters showing me the balance and the balance due.
What was the ultimate sentence, Mr. Pacheco?
They charged me a $300 fine.
You can sit down. Are you uncomfortable standing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just have a seat. Now, Mr. Pacheco, can you tell me about the conversation you had with your brother with regard to this money?
Yeah, at the time when the police had they came into the house and they wanted to know where my brother's stuff was. I showed him in the corner because that was my father and my brother's agreement that his stuff was to stay in the corner. That way, if in case anything was to happen, because he told my dad about the search clause, that his stuff was in the corner and nowhere else in the house. He wasn't home at the time.
Who wasn't home at the time? Your brother?
Yeah, right, correct. My two young sisters were there at the time and very upset that my father had been taken to jail. Me and my brother here walked my sisters to McDonald's to get them something to eat. On the way to McDonald's, we met up with my brother who was coming home. At that time, I told him that our father had been arrested, and he felt bad about it. And he told me, well, all I have right now is $100. Do you know how much the bail is? I said the officers didn't tell me what the bail was set at or anything. He called up and he found out that the bail was set at $8,000, and he asked me if I had any money. I did have money. I was reluctant to loan him the money because he had just gotten out of jail and I knew he didn't have any funds at the time. I did at that time tell him I would loan him the money, and he told me he would pay me back because he felt bad that he had put his father in that situation.
But he did say, I'll pay you back.
Yes, he did, and he also said that he would pay back any fines, and also if there was any lawyer or attorney fees, he would pay that. And
did he say that to you?
Yes. My brother, David, was there at that time when we had the conversation.
Okay, I'll hear you.
Well, what had happened was, I had just been recently incarcerated. I got out, I spoke to my father, I explained to him, I didn't explain to him about the search clause at first. I explained to him that I had nowhere to go, I didn't have nothing to do, I needed to stay at his place for a while. To move my stuff in, like she said, I had one particular area, and at that time I told him, that's when he told me to put it in one area, because I told him about the search clause.
This was after you moved in?
This was, yeah, right after I moved in. And he said, okay, well, rather than just putting me out, he says, well, leave all your stuff here. If anything happens, your probation officer wants to come, this is your area, they can search your stuff. He knew I wasn't doing drugs or nothing. I knew what he did, but he did it in his own room because he was sick, and a long time his doctor told him, you know, that if it helps him, go ahead and smoke it, but he couldn't, you know, prescribe it due to, you know, fear of being incarcerated himself, the doctor. So then when the police came in, I wasn't there. They came in, to my understanding, they didn't even search any of my stuff. They just smelled marijuana in the house. They went to his room with unannounced, and then they seen him smoking the marijuana. So they took him to jail. I was coming back home. My sister told me, Pop's in jail, what happened? Your probation officer come, they searched. So I was real worried about it. I was like, well, how much is going to get out? We'll find out. So we found out his bail. I had $100 in my pocket. I was thinking, where can I get the money? Where? And Gloria says, oh, I got the $700. So I said, yeah, well, you do? I said, okay, well, let's go bail him out. And as far as all the payments of the lawyers and the court costs and all that, I never agreed to pay none of that. I thought about it. So, well, he got 8 kids. Everybody. I didn't put him in there smoking the weed. I didn't have him in there smoking because they came search for me. They didn't find nothing on me. They didn't find nothing in my area.
Other than the fact that you agreed to pay her back, you would have no legal obligation to pay for your father, even though the probation officer was there looking for you. And but for the fact that you were living in your father's house, your father, in all probability, would not have been arrested, at least on that day.
Yes.
That doesn't make you legally responsible unless you agreed to pay her back.
I didn't agree to pay no lawyer fees or...
Step up. Tell me your name.
David Pacheco.
You were with your sister when you found your brother?
Yes.
Tell me about the conversation as you remember it.
My sister, when we approached my brother, like she said, she explained to my brother, about how the police came and how they took him to jail and stuff like that. And he couldn't stress enough how bad he felt of, it was his fault that my father had ended up in jail that day. He said it more than once that, I will pay you back anything, whatever fines come up, anything, I will pay you back as soon as I can.
When did you decide, sir, that since there were 8 children, it should be spread around?
When I couldn't pay the bill, when I couldn't pay nothing, and I didn't agree to pay
I just want to know, you didn't say to your sister at the time, well, there are 8 children, so we'll spread this around.
No, I didn't, because at the time I was just worried about getting my father out of jail.
Right.
As far as the bail, I may be responsible for the bail because if he was incarcerated because of me, but that don't make me got to pay. Well, I got to pay the plant fees. He got his plants took, his weed took, his put it in jail. I didn't put him there. I didn't tell him to smoke no weed. I know it helps him, but I didn't know they was coming to raid him.
Mr. Pacheco, I don't think you listened to what I said before. I said, if it weren't for the fact that I believe that you told your sister at the time that you would pay her back this money, you would not have a legal obligation to do it because it's not your fault that your father was smoking marijuana, even as he claims, for medicinal purposes. But I can imagine how badly you felt at that moment when you found out that your father had been taken to jail.
Yes, of course.
That you felt terrible, and you said, let's do whatever we can to get him out, and I'll take care of the bills, but I don't have the money now. I mean, that sounds logical to me.
Well,
later on, perhaps.
We didn't even discussed anything about the lawyer fees or anything till after that day anyway. Now, when I told my father, let me know what's happening and I'll do whatever I could do, but I didn't say I will pay it. And then when he starts coming at me with $2,500 for a lawyer, I'd have got a public pretender.
Public pretender. I never heard them referred to as a public pretender.
I've seen some of them work. Some of them are pretenders.
That's what I say, too. But see, you get that from the state. I mean, why I'm a...
Public
I wouldn't get no
pretender. That's a new one.
$2,500 on a lawyer.
Send that one to the Bar Association. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $3,600. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I ain't tell him go get no lawyer, tell him to, go hire this high-priced lawyer and get all these fines. I never agreed to none of that.
Sometimes family, they might say something at the time and not mean it, but you just have to pursue it.
And now the next case.
All parties on Clay versus Markham. Step forward, please.
50-year-old respiratory therapist James Clay is suing 30-year-old former teacher's aide Don Markham. James says during his family stay at a hotel, Don injured his daughter in the pool.
Mr. Clay, I understand that you were at a motel with one of your daughters.
2 of my daughters, yes, ma'am.
And it was a nice day, and you and your daughters were in the swimming pool.
My 2 daughters were in the pool, and my wife was supervising them.
And at the same time, the defendant was in the swimming pool.
Yes, ma'am.
You were there with a group of people?
Yes, I was there with a school group. I was a room chaperone.
You were the chaperone?
Room chaperone, just for the evenings in the room.
According to your complaint, Mr. Clay, the defendant injured your 11-year-old daughter.
Yes, Your Honor.
Were you present when that happened?
I was not present.
Who is a witness to what happened?
My wife.
Could you step up, please? Mrs. Clay, tell me what you observed.
Well, Mr. Markham was in the pool. He was in the middle of this group. He was picking people up and throwing them.
He'd throw one this way and one that way, and, you know, just every direction. And some of the other mothers and I were looking at each other like, this isn't right, he's going to hurt somebody. This is an accident that's going to happen. And it did.
Well, tell me what happened.
Well, he picked up a young man, threw him. My daughter was close to
How did he throw him?
Like that, through the water. You know, hurling and then down on my daughter's left shoulder. Pushed her under the water. And she came back up and her shoulder was obviously hurt.
Well, what did Mr. Markham do?
Well, I looked right over at him and he just kind of shrugged his shoulders and didn't say anything.
Did you take your daughter for any treatment?
We went back to the room, got dressed, and subsequently went to the hospital, the ER.
Do you have any papers from the emergency room?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Laura, would you like to step up with your mom and dad?
Sure.
Tell me what happened when this person fell on you.
Well, me and my little sister were jumping off the edge of the pool, and I was reaching towards the ladder, and I turned around and I was looking at her, and that's when the gentleman fell on top of me.
What did he say to you? Do you remember?
Yeah, he was touching my shoulder. He kept on asking if I was okay. I contacted back to my mom. I was screaming and crying.
Okay, what was the total amount, Mr. Clay, of the family's unreimbursed medical bills?
$424.10, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Markham, I'll hear you.
Well, I was at the pool, and with what she said, I wasn't throwing people here and there. It was only the second time I had thrown the boy, and I saw where he had landed before, so I went under the water so he could get his foot here and a foot on his shoulder. So when I came up out of the water, after he tapped me, he went back. Well, I didn't know he had landed on the girl until I had turned around.
Were you standing in the pool, sir?
Yes.
Didn't you think that maybe if you threw him over your shoulder, he could have landed on his head in the pool if your feet touched the bottom of the pool?
Well, the water was up to here. I was
right, but you're throwing somebody up. You're thrusting them up, which means they can go over on their head.
Yes.
Down to the bottom of the pool, snap their neck. Didn't that ever occur to you?
No, ma'am, because the area that I was throwing him into.
Launched is a good word.
Well, the area that he was going into was deeper than the area I was standing.
How much deeper?
I'd say a good foot, but I figured if somebody wasn't diving head first or anything like that, if somebody was just dropping into water, you know, he had asked me to do it, so I was having fun and enjoying myself with the kids, having a good time, so I did.
Well, that was pretty stupid, wasn't it?
Looking back at it now, yes, but.
Well, why didn't you follow through with these people with regard to seeing whether she was injured?
Well, after the boy had landed on her and I saw that she was injured, I did go over to her, asked her if she needed help. I told her, you know, I'm sorry about this happening. And I stood there. I was going to help her up out of the pool, and she told me, no, no, don't touch me, don't touch me. So I backed up out of the pool and just kept an eye on her until her mother came over to her. And then I watched them go out of the pool. And that was the last time I heard anything until, you know, the girl from the front desk came over to me to get my name and address to fill out the accident report. And then I didn't hear from him again until September 15th is when I got a certified letter from him. He gave me 4 days to actually get a hold of him, and he was asking for $914 at the time. He gave me 4 days to reply to him, or he said he was going to sue me in the letter. And I sent him out this copy of this letter, asking for certain information just so I can see and what and all has been done and what and all I needed to verify what was going on.
Let me see the envelope, please. This
is the envelope for the first time.
Mr. Markham, well, you talk here in terms, sir, of your level of responsibility. But what do you mean, my level of responsibility?
I know as myself, I have a deductible amount, but I never heard of a deductible amount being so high. So I thought,
so you're talking about the level of your financial responsibility.
Yes.
Not that you don't have bear responsibility for the actions that you caused.
Right. You know, even though, you know, like I said, it was an accident, but I was willing to work with the gentleman.
No, that wasn't an accident. That wasn't an accident. An accident happens when sometimes there are unforeseen circumstances. I don't view this as an accident. You are a mature adult. You, by your actions, dealing with the kids that you were supposed to supervise, caused her injury. So there's no question about your responsibility. The only question is how much. Now we know that just the money part of your responsibility is $424.10 with regard to out-of-pocket expenses by the plaintiff. Is that what you believe is your level of responsibility?
Yes, ma'am.
And what about the discomfort and the pain and suffering suffered by the victim? Don't you bear any responsibility for that?
Well, I feel for her circumstances, and I don't know if there is a amount you could put on.
That's what courts do. Courts put on an amount.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
What were you doing that summer? Were you still in school on June 11th?
No, actually, I went on a camping trip with my dad and my little sister.
Right afterwards?
No, we had to wait at least for the rest of the month.
For the camping trip, my husband said that she couldn't really hold a backpack so they could go, really hiking for a long time or anything like that. So
It was a trip that we had planned all year, just me and my 2 daughters going out west. And it ruled her out of soccer for the fall. She wasn't able to play.
You mean in September you still had residual effect of the shoulder injury?
I couldn't move my shoulder for a very far distance for about 3 months afterwards.
Mr. Markham, that's what courts mean by pain and suffering. Plaintiff is suing you, Mr. Markham, for $3,000. He's suing you, I assume. The other $2,500 is for pain and suffering on behalf of his daughter for the discomfort that she endured as a result of your actions. He is absolutely entitled to that. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $3,000. That's all.
Thank you, Your Honor. Parties are excused. You may step out.
Amanda Kessler is suing her cousin, 26-year-old carpenter Jason Napier, for beating her van with a shovel. Jason says he only broke the taillight.
Order. All rise. Yes, this is case number 226 on the calendar in the matter of Kessler versus Napier. Parties have been sworn in. Judge, you may be seated. Ma'am, have a seat, please.
All right. Well, there are certain things about this lawsuit that we can all agree on. Ms. Kessler, the defendant is your cousin.
Correct.
Also a neighbor.
Correct.
And he has a girlfriend. Girlfriend?
Yes, ma'am.
You also know Dawn.
Yes.
And according to what I've managed to piece together from reading these papers, you were having a conversation with Dawn. And during that conversation, you told her something about your cousin that she didn't like, and that certainly he didn't like. What did you tell her about him?
That Jason was in Terre Haute on a boat, fishing and partying all weekend, Labor Day weekend, instead of being out of town working.
So you told his girlfriend that he wasn't where he was supposed to be, but he was out partying when he was supposed to be employed, right?
Yes.
And you confronted Jason?
Yes, ma'am.
Step up. When did you tell Jason?
While I was on the phone with Amanda, I had asked him about it.
So he was at your house?
Yes.
Had you called Amanda, or did she call you?
She had called me.
While you were on the phone with her, did you call into Jason and say, Jason, tell me what you did?
After she had told me Jason was sitting there, and I had asked him.
Were you still on the phone with her?
Yes, I was.
So you're holding the phone?
Yes.
And what did you say to him?
I had asked him, Amanda had told me that he had lost his job and that he was out drinking. So I had asked him about it. And
what did you say?
I asked Jason if he had lost his job, and he said that he didn't lose it, that him and his partner that he was working with had walked off of the job. And I proceeded to tell him that Amanda said that they were out partying, and I had asked him about that, and he said no. Then Jason got mad and went over to confront Amanda about this. And then this is when the confrontation went into effect.
Did you follow him?
No, not over to Amanda's house. I was watching out of my bay window, which...
So you didn't see what happened when you
Not
got
when
there?
he went over to her house, no.
So that you can sit down. So here we have it. You put your nose in where it didn't belong. He got mad, and you went over to her house.
True.
Furious.
Yes.
What happened when you got there?
Oh, I didn't go in the home. I just was outside, and she ran into the house, and I grabbed
ran
the
into the
shovel.
house?
She did, Amanda. I grabbed the shovel, and I proceeded to go up to her van, and I destroyed the taillight. I hit the taillight, and I paid for a new one, got the receipt, and gave it to her. From that point, there was nothing ever said or anything about it until I got papers from her saying she wanted to serve me to go to court, saying I caused $1,900 of damage, that I beat the van with the shovel, which there is no dents on there from a shovel. It's all hail damage that were already existingly on the vehicle when they bought it.
Why did you pick up a shovel, Mr. Napier?
Well, I was frustrated, and I was tired of her interfering in my life and starting trouble with my family when she ruined her own life with her family.
You mean you couldn't settle that with words?
Well, words only lead so far. It just accumulated of her doing it to us so many times and so many incidents and so many reports. You know, I just got fed up with it, and it just tried to relieve the pressure and show her what it feels like when she destroys people's property.
Why, she ever destroyed your property?
Yes, she has, many of times.
Really?
Yes.
Well, tell me about that.
Well, I got a report here of stating she did criminal mischief and she popped my fiance's tires in broad daylight and said that 2 men in a Buick pulled up and jumped out of the car and popped the tires when she was drunk, and she deliberately went over there and did that.
Well, how do you know she deliberately did that?
Because we saw her out of the front bay window. We told her to watch and heard the tires pop. You know, and tires make a loud noise when you stab a knife through them.
Now, your defense is that, yes, you did cause damage to the car.
Yes, and I knew I was at fault, and I paid for it, and I told her that I was sorry for that, you know, and I knew I did wrong, and I got papers reported to me that I needed to go to court.
All right, Miss Kessler, you tell me what happened. He comes to your house, and you run inside.
Okay, let's back up a little bit, Your Honor. When I was on the phone with Dawn, she advised me to call 911, that Jason was in a very big rage, so I did so quickly, ran to my master bedroom closet while he was in my house screaming that he's going to burn my house down, beat me up. I then heard the door shut, and I was on the phone with the dispatcher at the time, and I watched Jason pick up a shovel from my storm door and just rage from my hood all the way back. And there's scars, and there are dents. There's scars on my windows, on my hood, all the way down where it needs to be repainted. I have a very nice-looking van, and I was so frustrated and confused. The police said that they would take care of it, talk to him. He said he'd pay for the damages. So I left it at that. Well, nothing was getting done, and I saw that there was more damage, got the estimate, and wow, almost $2,000 worth of repairs.
Tell me about him fixing the taillight.
I had a friend over. Dawn called them over. He did not fix the taillight. Dawn gave the taillight to a friend of mine in the yard.
So he purchased a taillight?
Right. And then I had to pay somebody to put it on for me.
You have photographs of the car?
No, I do not.
Why not?
Well, I did. I forgot to bring them.
How am I supposed to assess the damage?
Well, I have 2 estimates here that have full explanatory of what happened. I have a police report here that has
So let me see the reports that you have.
We do have pictures, Your Honor.
You have pictures?
Yes.
She wants the police report. And
I want the police report and the estimates, and I will take a look at the defendant's photographs, please. Now, Dawn, you did not witness this, is that right?
Yes, I did.
You said you were in the house.
Yes, I witnessed it through my bay window, which her van, she has pads that come up into the side of my yard, which is right in front of my bay window, and I witnessed the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're showing me these photographs, sir.
And if those were created by a shovel, they'd be a lot
It would
bigger
have done
than that.
a lot more damage than that.
This one certainly looks as if it's an absolutely fresh scratch with a dent. Want to take a look at that on the hood?
Right.
He never went to the front of the vehicle. He
Never.
stayed at the end. When the police came, the shovel was still by the tail light, halfway in the yard and on the sidewalk. He hit the tail light, dropped the shovel, and he proceeded to leave.
You're also presenting a bill here that talks about front lamps, front bumper.
he hit my van about 22 times.
Well, if he hit your van about 22 times, then you should have, clearly, some evidence to demonstrate that. Certainly this caused substantial damage.
Right, that was at the end of his rage.
This is not damage. That's what your van looks like now, right?
Right. There's scars all the way up and down. The
Well, but
window's scarred.
You don't see that here. What you're saying is those scrapes and dents were not caused by a shovel.
Right, right.
Well, if you pick up a shovel and you cause this kind of damage, you see more than just a scrape.
Right, right.
Doesn't that seem logical to you?
Seems logical to me.
Especially with the anger that he had in him to do little dents like that. I mean...
How much did it cost you, Miss Kessler, to have the taillight fixed?
I paid a gentleman $10, a friend of mine, just to install it for me.
Miss Kessler, why is it that you felt it necessary to tell Dawn about your cousin's Labor Day foray?
I didn't call her purposely for that. Dennis called in on call waiting while I was on the phone with Dawn, and then he told me this information. I popped back over on Dawn. I said, well, that was Dennis, and she said, what's going on? And I gave her just facts, that Jason was in Terre Haute on the boat instead of at work.
You see, Miss Kessler, what happens is when you stick your nose in somebody else's business, something's going to happen. I mean, what did you think? Jason was going to thank you for outing him with his girlfriend? Did you think he was going to be happy about that? That he's out fooling around on a weekend when he's supposed to be working? In any event, I think you better settle your differences, because if you're not only cousins but neighbors, this kind of stuff is absolutely ridiculous. You say it cost you an additional $10 to have it installed?
Correct.
That's the judgment. Judgment for the plaintiff for the amount of $10. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
It was wrong for her to call over there and start stuff with my fiance and try to get me into a predicament that shouldn't have been escalated into.
I would like to move on with life.
And now the next case.
All parties on York versus Morash. Step forward, please.
64-year-old retired postal worker Beverly York is suing her son, 39-year-old mover Leonard Morash, for a loan to pay outstanding court fines. Leonard says his mother told him he didn't have to pay it back.
According to your complaint, your son was incarcerated. What were you in jail for, sir?
A felon in possession of a firearm, ma'am.
And he had served his time on that charge, but it appeared that he had some outstanding parking tickets or outstanding driving tickets. Is that right, sir?
Outstanding fines, Your Honor.
What kind of fines?
For a little criminal activity of possession of cocaine, possession of marijuana.
And what were the fines for? Court fees?
Yes, ma'am.
That you hadn't paid?
Correct.
And how long?
Several years.
Not terribly responsible. So that you were contacted in order to find out if you would put up the money to pay those fines so that he could get out of jail.
Correct.
You agreed to do that, according to you. You made a loan to him.
$705.
$705. He got out of jail, didn't pay you.
Correct.
Who contacted you?
At first, my son contacted me.
From prison?
From prison. And he asked if I would loan him the money. And he has made several loans in the past that he has never paid me back. And this time I said no. And then he called later on from his counselor's office, and he wanted me to speak with his counselor. And his counselor advised me that he had changed and thought that it would be a good idea if I helped him out.
How long were you in jail, sir?
I was in there for about 3 years.
You were anxious to get out?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
How long would you have had to remain in jail if your mother hadn't paid the fines?
It might have been like 6 months.
So you were looking at another 6 months?
Correct.
Now, you did call your mother initially. After she finished speaking with your counselor, you spoke to her. Is that right?
Yeah, she was a little leery of doing it in the first place.
And what did you tell her?
I said that I would come back to live with her and be with my son.
Your mother has legal custody of your son.
Yes, she does at this point in time.
Well, she has for a long time, I assume.
Correct. I've been in and out of his life.
How long have you had legal custody of your grandson?
Since he was a year and a half old.
That's you, right?
Yes.
You like living with your grandma?
Yes, I do.
Treats you good?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, do you want to be in here or would you like to wait outside? How do you feel about it?
I'll stay in here.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you told your mother that you would come back to live with her.
Yes, I did.
Did you go back to live with her?
No, I'm residing in Concord now. I have a good job there and a beautiful apartment, and I'm with my wife. And she doesn't like the fact that I'm with my wife. But she had told me prior to that I did not have to pay her back as long as I was with my son. Came
Well,
back
when
into
did
his
she
life.
tell you? Okay, so let's go back. When did she tell you that you didn't have to pay her back?
During a visit at the halfway house that I was in, after getting out so I could get back into society and conform and just do the right things. And she had visited me with my son, and it wasn't about the money issue. It was about me being back into my son's life and him having a father, and which I always tried to do. My mother's very controlling and overbearing at times.
She can't control you while you're in prison, sir. What did she say to forgive this loan?
She said to me, it's not about the money, Lenny. I just want you to come back into your son's life and take care of him, have responsibility for him. And I've always wanted to do that, but I have my crosses that I bear. I've made mistakes in my life. all
Okay,
right?
so what did she...
And I just want to carry on.
So what was the arrangement? The arrangement was that you would come back to live with her,
Correct.
be in your son's life,
Mhm.
and if you did that, she would forgive the loan.
Right, and not go
Just
back
a
to my...
second. Hold on. Did you go back to live with her?
No, I did not, ma'am.
Well, if you did not go back to live with her, sir, you still owe her the money. Now, you were married at that time?
I've been married for 3 years.
So instead of going and living with your mother, you went back to your wife.
Correct.
Well, do you think that you breached the agreement with your mother?
No, I don't, because I believe that she had said that I didn't have to pay her.
She said you didn't
She-
have
she
to pay her
forgave the
if
loan.
what? If what?
If I went back into her life, in
No,
my
you
son's
told me if
life.
you went back to live with her.
Right.
With your son.
With my son, correct.
Okay, but you didn't do that.
No, I did not.
So you didn't fulfill your part of the agreement which forgave the loan. Are you following me?
Yes, I am.
Well, I mean, because you had a choice. Your choice was that either...
I went back to live with my wife, correct.
Right.
And then she started haunting me on the phone and calling me all sorts of names on the phone with my son on the phone. My son's screaming and crying. She's back in the background calling me all sorts of, insidious, crazy names. And I love her. She's my mother, but I can't put up with her sometimes.
Mr. Marash,
Yes, ma'am.
you were in prison for 3 years, so during the 3 years that you were in prison, you were, I assume, not contributing to the financial support of your son. Is that right?
Correct.
Now that you have a good job, how much money have you been sending to your mother to contribute to your son's support?
I haven't.
Why not?
She hasn't asked for any. If she would let me into my son's life,
Just a minute.
this is my flesh and blood. I thought blood was thicker than water. Now it's
Why don't you see if this young man wants to step outside while we finish this discussion?
Okay.
Okay?
Sure. Look at my son here for a second.
Sure.
How you doing?
Fine. Okay.
Your grandson is what, 11?
He's 10.
He's 10. I assume that the reason that you have legal custody of your grandson is because not only was his father incapable of taking care of him, but his mother as well.
Correct.
Is his mother alive?
Yes, Your Honor.
Does she have any contact with him?
No, she does not.
You should not wait for her to say, I need some money for him. She's been managing without you for 9 years. You should say, now I have a good job and I want to become an active member of society and fulfill my responsibilities. So for my good job, I'm going to send you $100 a week, $200 a week. I'm going to try to make up for what I haven't sent you over 9 years. Instead, you continue to bleed her. You should bless her every day. She took over your responsibility for 9 years. I mean, you may be angry. You may think my mother's controlling. She sets the times that I can see my son. She wants me to only see him at her house. All of those things. Does that sound familiar to you?
something like that.
I would too. She's right to say to you, you'll see him on my terms until I'm sure that you're going to be a positive influence in his life. You're not going to be here today and gone tomorrow.
Yeah, but I also understand that a father should be in his son's life irregardless of mistakes or, things. It's the way it should be.
Well, who
I have a
who
lot.
said that?
I
Where
have
is
a
that
lot
written?
to offer him.
What do you have to offer him?
Friendship, love, companion, being his father.
Fathering a child takes a second. That doesn't make you a parent. She's his parent. Mother and father. You weren't there when he had the measles, the mumps, the chicken pox if he had, when he had strep throat, when he had an upset stomach, when he had to do his homework, when he had problems with a classmate, when somebody made him feel badly in school because his father was in jail. You weren't there. She was. You have to prove yourself to not only your son, but to your mother as well. And you're going to start proving yourself by paying her what you owe her. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $705. That's all.
Thank you,
Parties
Your
are
Honor.
excused. You may step out.
19-year-old sales associate Misty Domitrovich for the return of an engagement ring and a car stereo.
Order. All rise. Your Honor, this is case number 315 on the calendar in the matter of Hooker versus Domitrovich.
Thank you.
Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Ladies, have seats, please.
Mr. Hooker, according to your complaint, you and the defendant were engaged. You had an argument. The engagement was off. She refuses to return the engagement ring that you bought for her. And when she drove off after an argument, she drove off in her car, which had in it your stereo.
Yes.
You want your stereo back and the engagement ring.
Yes, Your Honor.
The defendant says that it was not an engagement ring but a gift, and the stereo was also a gift. And if you want those things back, she's countersuing for all the things she bought you during the course of this ill-fated love affair. Right?
Right.
How long were you engaged, sir?
About 2.5 years.
When did you become engaged?
July of '98.
Tell me about that.
I bought her a ring. It was a smaller one.
Was it in the summertime that you gave her that ring?
I'm not sure.
You bought her a small ring, let's say in July,
Okay.
and you asked her to marry you. Were you living together at the time?
No.
And I assume she said yes and put the ring on her finger.
Yes.
So far, is that right?
Right.
And then there came a point, according to you, when you say she wanted a bigger ring.
Yes, Your
How much of a larger ring did you buy?
Honor. 3/4 carat bigger.
So how large was the ring?
It was a 1 carat.
And when did you give it to her?
About a couple weeks before Christmas.
Tell me about the moment that you gave it to her, because she says that this was just a gift and not an engagement ring.
It was just at my house, and I had bought the bigger ring, and I gave it to her.
That doesn't sound very romantic, Mr. Hooker.
It wasn't.
Am I making you nervous, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, try not to be nervous. I only eat litigants on Thursdays. Today is not a Thursday. Now, when you gave her this larger ring, did she give you the smaller ring back?
Yes.
Is that right?
Right.
Why did you give him the smaller ring back?
Because he asked for it back.
The smaller ring was an engagement ring.
Right.
What did you think the larger ring was?
A Christmas present. That's what he stated. When he asked for it back, he said that he wanted to upgrade it for a Christmas present. He wanted me to have a bigger ring.
A bigger what kind of ring? Christmas
diamond
present ring?
I guess, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this question. When you gave him back the smaller ring, did you break your engagement?
No.
So you were still planning to marry?
Mm-hmm.
When you gave him back the smaller ring, did you ever say to him, when are we going shopping for my engagement ring?
No.
Would be fair to say that you didn't say that to him because you assumed that the larger ring that he bought you, which was also a diamond ring, was an engagement ring.
Right.
That was given to you around Christmas time.
Yes.
All right. So it wasn't a Christmas present.
Well, I got it given to me with the Christmas bear with the ring on its arm, so I figured it was.
You figured.
Yes.
So because the ring was attached to a bear, you said it was, where's
Right,
the
well,
ring?
it was 2 weeks before Christmas, and that was the only Christmas present I got received from him for Christmas.
Sounds like a nice Christmas present. Where's the ring?
Right here.
Can I see it, please? Okay, now let's deal with the stereo. The ring is easy.
Nice bear.
Cute bear, very lovely ring. Okay, want to tell me about the stereo?
Yes, we went out shopping. It was like a week before our 4-year anniversary together. Went up and I asked if she wanted to get a stereo put in her car. Before I even purchased it, I said, if we break up, I get the stereo back. Because I'm...
Were you engaged at the time?
Yes.
Were you contemplating breaking up?
No, but we weren't getting along before, like a couple months before that.
Mr. Hooker, it's not nice to try to fool Mother Nature. Nobody gives their fiancé anniversary present and says, but if we break up, I get it back. Very unromantic. Did he ever say to you, if you broke up, he got the stereo back?
He asked me if, he said if we were to break up, this is already after the stereo was installed in my car.
Yeah.
And it was on July 24th, our anniversary, and I even have a notarized statement from the stereo shop, Sound, where we bought it from.
What does the notarized statement have to do with what he said?
Well, he's saying that he bought it 2 weeks before our anniversary, and actually it was on our anniversary.
So what? Did you agree to give it back if you broke
No,
up?
I actually just looked at him and smiled and thought he was kidding around. And I just said,
I would
yeah,
think
right,
he was
whatever.
kidding around, too. Not very romantic to give an anniversary present in contemplation of a breakup. Anyway, tell me about the stereo. Where is it?
It's in my car.
Are you still paying it off?
Yes, Your Honor. I have a witness that was at my house when I asked her if I got it back again. And she said, yes, she would give it back if we broke up.
Oh. Did you ever say that to him?
No.
I'll hear the witness.
Matt? Matt Haley?
Step up.
Stand
Has witness
right
been
there.
sworn?
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in these matters?
Yes.
State your name.
My name is Matt Haley.
Mr. Haley, what do you know about this stereo?
I was there the day he was installing it.
What?
I was there the day he was installing it to her car because she was messing with it. He told her that if he if they ever break up, do I get my stereo back? And she said yes.
And you heard her say yes?
Yes.
I never said yes.
Do you remember that incident with
I
Mr.
remember him
Henry?
being there, but he was only there for the matter of about 5 minutes.
Now, try to think real hard. Other than the engagement ring, what'd you buy for her? Big items.
It's a stereo equipment.
Which stereo equipment?
The amp and the subs and a CD player.
CD player for where? The house?
No, for her car. It was a different purchase on a different date.
Let me see it.
And Your Honor, when we did break up, he never asked for the engagement ring back, and I've seen him twice since our breakup. It was always the stereo equipment.
Excuse me, Your Honor. Before she left my house, I asked for the ring. My mother was standing
The
right
ring
there.
he's entitled to back. The ring is an engagement ring.
All I was worried about that night is getting out of the house because he had my keys and would not let me leave.
So you were prepared to give him back the ring?
Right. He can have the ring back. I'm not.
Oh, perfect.
But I would like mine back, and maybe the Christmas present that I bought him.
No, no, this is not a Christmas present. It's not a Christmas present. It's an engagement gift.
Well, it was an engagement / Christmas present.
No, 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 no. It was an engagement ring given to you on Christmas. The fact that somebody is sweet enough to pick a special day on which to give you an upgraded engagement ring doesn't make it a Christmas present. It's not a Christmas present. You're not entitled to the gifts that you made to him, nor are you entitled back the gifts that you made to her. According to this, you put this stuff in the car well over a year ago. Is that right?
The CD player was over a year ago, but this stuff here was 7/26 of 2000.
Let me see. So you don't want this back. Well, you'd like it, but you're not going to get it. Now, July of 2000, when did you break up?
The 10th
Of what?
October.
It was August because it was my
August.
birthday.
So you broke up in August, not even a month later,
Right.
right? Well, then the smart, nice thing to do is to make sure that he doesn't get stuck with paying off things that you still have in your car, right?
Your Honor, though, that was an anniversary gift, and it was installed the 24th of on our anniversary of July. And I have the statement, which from
Pay
the
careful attention to me.
Okay.
If he wasn't paying this stuff off, which he is, I would say to you, look, it's a gift, forget about it. But he's paying off this stuff. I don't see why a young woman needs 2 woofers in her car. We have a woofer.
The 18s were mine on the top.
What? What is he talking about? On the bottom, I got a punch woofer.
Yeah. Then a punch 360, Your Honor.
Explain.
Right here's
Your Honor,
dual 10-inch box.
What?
may I say something?
At the top, I guess. Those right there.
As far as the CD player goes that you have a receipt for that Dan wants back, Dan, that was in Misty's first car. Dan took that out and blew it up.
Listen to me. He's not getting this back.
It's
This
blown up.
happened
He
over
did
a
it.
year ago. You're her mother?
I am.
Okay. So let's talk reasonably. 2 young people. Just a second. Let me figure this out with Bert.
That stuff is in her car. This stuff down here is in his car.
Okay. How old are you?
19.
How old are you?
19.
All right. So you have 2 babies. 2 babies?
Yeah.
Do you work?
Yes, Your Honor.
What kind of work do you do?
Construction.
And you?
A sales clerk.
So they have limited amount of money. In order for him to buy that ring, I guarantee you he had to either save up for a long time or go out on credit for a long time. Why you chose to become engaged when you were 18 years old, I don't know. Why you chose to extend yourself financially, either one of you, I don't know, but you did. But at age 19, if they broke up, he's going to get this ring back. Hopefully he'll be able to sell it. But here, the end of July, he installed all this stuff in her car. 2-3 weeks later, they break up. For whatever reason. It seems to me he should not be stuck with a bill that he's paying off. She's not paying off any bills, right?
No, but because she paid for the gifts that she bought him on their anniversary, like the $100 she gave him, taking him to dinner and the movies, being that she paid for that and his is on credit, he should be able to keep his and she has to give her gifts back?
Are you telling me, madam, that during the course of their relationship he didn't buy her gifts?
Oh, he did, yes.
Of course, they bought each other gifts. They bought each other gifts. Those gifts were all paid off.
Correct.
The only thing that's not paid off is this equipment that's in her car that he's paying off.
Correct.
And he's going to be stuck with paying this off from his job at 19 for a very long time. stuff that, in my judgment, are not necessaries for your daughter. A couple of woofers and tweeters you don't need. You put in a little radio, that's an AM/FM radio, you turn it on, you listen to music, and you turn it off. When you have limited funds, you don't spend $700, $800 to put equipment in a car. That's stupid, especially when you're saving up to get married, which I assume you were. You want to give him back this equipment?
No.
Well, you're going to. Court will draft an order that the items purchased on the 24th of July will be returned to the...
And, Your Honor, do I get my engagement ring back that he still has?
Women do not give men engagement rings, madam. Women do not give men engagement rings. You know that. Could have been a friendship ring, could have been a ring to show your undying devotion, but no man that I know ever got an engagement ring. Now, the only problem that you have, Mr. Hooker, is it's going to cost money to get this stuff removed.
I know the guy at the stereo shop. He'll probably remove it for free for me.
You think he will?
Yes.
You will pay the cost of doing that if there is a cost to remove it, because her car should be in the same condition as it was before. You got it?
Yes, sir.
What?
We'd just soon give Danny the monetary money, the money value of it, instead of having it
No,
taken
I think
out
he
of
should
the
have
car.
it back because he may have to sell it. And what price do you fix on items that are used? I'm ordering her to give back what he purchased.
In the condition that it's in now?
Yes, I assume that your daughter's not going to do anything to vandalize anything that's in the car. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
I'm just glad that engagement comes before marriage and I had time to realize he was a loser.
Won't be getting engaged for a long time.
I'm just glad it's over and I can move on with my life.
And now the next case.
All parties on Bucavalis versus Welch. Step forward, please.
41-year-old customer service rep Lorena Bucavalis and her son, 14-year-old Matthew, are suing Donna and Clifford Welch and their son, 16-year-old Thomas. Matthew says Thomas won't return a gold chain he allowed him to borrow.
Okay, I'd like the parents to all be seated, please, because the parents weren't there. Mr. Bucavalis, according to the complaint that I've read, you and some friends went into a convenience store, and the convenience store is, I assume, owned by you two folks. And this is your son.
Yes.
And your son was working there on that day. And while you were in there, the defendant commented upon a gold chain that you were wearing.
Right.
How many friends were you with?
2.
And what are their names?
Eric and Roger.
Had you ever been in this store before?
Nope.
Is it near your home?
Nope.
And you had never seen this young man before school, nothing? You didn't know him at all?
I know who he is. Yeah, I've seen him in school before.
Did you know his name?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Let's try yes. Yes sounds a lot better in court, okay? Had you ever exchanged words with him?
No.
You never said hello, goodbye, nothing, but you knew his face?
Yeah.
From
Yes.
school. What happened when you got into the store?
Well, we went in because Eric wanted to buy some gum and some soda, and we were talking to him because Eric and Roger are friends with him, and he commented on my necklace. And
What?
He commented on my necklace, and I asked him if he wanted to buy it because I was looking to sell it.
That's not true.
Yes?
And he said, all right, and I let him hold on to it for a day, and he said to come back the next day to pick it up, and he's going to say whether he wanted to buy it or not.
Mm-hmm.
We left. Next day we came back, and I asked him about it. He asked how much you want for it, and I said I didn't want to sell it anymore, and he said he lost it.
Okay, now hear you.
He came in the store, right, and they were looking around and stuff, and they asked me if they could buy cigarettes. And I told them no because I knew how old they were in school and stuff. So they just started threatening me, saying that they were going to come back to me somehow and pay me back for not selling them cigarettes.
And that's all you know about anything?
Yeah, and then a few days later, they said that I stole his chain and stuff like that.
Had you ever had any trouble with him before?
No.
Where are your two friends, the two friends that were with you?
In the store with me.
Where
well,
are they
they're not
today?
here. They couldn't come.
Why?
Their parents wouldn't let them.
By the way, where had you gotten that chain from?
St. Thomas.
St. Thomas?
Yeah, it's in the Virgin Islands.
Was it a gift or did you purchase it yourself?
Purchased it myself.
When you were there on vacation?
Yeah. Yes.
And how much was it?
$300.
When you came home that day, did your mother ask you where the chain was?
Yeah, and I told her.
Would you step up, please? What day was this, by the way?
It was June 24th, the day I went in the store and he asked about
Okay.
it.
You're his mom?
Yes.
Tell me about the day that he allegedly gave this chain to the defendant. Do you recall him coming home that day?
Yes.
Was there any conversation about the chain?
It wasn't that day, it was the next day. We had talked about the chain. He said he was going to the sandwich shack, and I had asked him why, and he had said that he had gone down there the day before with some friends, that Tom had commented on his necklace. Tom was thinking of buying it. Matthew had allowed Tom to have it for a day, and Matthew was going back the next day on Sunday to get the necklace back from Tom.
So it was only after he said he was going back to the sandwich shop and you asked him why that he told you about this arrangement he made with the defendant?
Yes.
Your Honor, I was there the day that Matt and 3 of his friends came into the store.
Okay, let me hear you.
He was talking with Tommy out front by the cash register for about 15 minutes. When they first came in, I went out, and he said that they didn't want sandwiches. So I went, back to my regular business. About 15 minutes, they're still out there. I walked around, and they decided to leave. And that's when I asked Tommy about it, and Tommy said that they wanted to buy cigarettes. And he said he hadn't sold it to them, and I said, well, I was glad about that.
How large is this store, sir?
Not very big. It's, I don't know exactly, but...
So it's not a very big store. So if there were any loud arguing...
It's like
listen to me. If there were any loud arguing between these boys, you would have heard it, right?
Right, I heard them talking, but I thought...
You heard them talking, but there was no arguing. If one of them wanted to buy cigarettes, and if, as your son said, they were very angry and they threatened him that they were going to get even with him, you would have heard that kind of loud talking, right?
Right.
Okay. I can think of no reason and no explanation has been given to me to satisfactorily convince me that the plaintiff is making up this story. He confirmed to his mother the very next day, same story that he's telling me today. He said he was going back to the sandwich shop to pick up his chain. He was told by your son that he lost it. Is that right?
Yeah.
If you lose it, you have to pay for it. Judgment for the plaintiff and the amount requested, $300. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Well, I know that Tom's sister...
8-year-old telecommunications technician Barry Shepard is suing his former friend, 50-year-old real estate investor Suzanne Shapiro, for property stolen from a garage and lost wages. Suzanne is countersuing for breach of contract and loss of rent.
Order. All rise. Now, this is case number 549 on the calendar in the matter of Shepard versus Shapiro. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated.
Mr. Shepard, you've known the defendant for approximately 10 years,
Yes.
according to the papers that I read. Where do you live?
I live in Agoura Hills, California.
In California. And you were living someplace else. Where were you living?
Yes, in Wellesley, Massachusetts.
According to your complaint, you wanted to come back to California. You contacted the defendant and agreed to rent a house that she had.
Yes, we talked about that, and against my better judgment, I agreed to do it. I know how money between friends can cause problems, and...
We didn't get there yet.
Yes, okay, excuse me.
You agreed to rent a house that she had.
Yes.
And the house already had a tenant in it, but she was going to serve that tenant with an eviction notice, and you were going to come down and rent that house.
Yes.
You did, in fact, travel from Massachusetts to California. The tenant didn't move out on the exact date the tenant was supposed to move out. You had your stuff delivered to California. And according to you, the defendant agreed to allow you to store your property in another rental property she had. And you did. You stored your stuff there.
Yes.
For a few days.
About 13 days, to be exact.
According to you, then you changed your mind about renting the property after she had already evicted the other tenant.
Yes.
You didn't want it for some reason. And when you went to get your stuff, you found some property missing.
Exactly. Well, I called her on the phone when on the
Not there
23rd.
yet.
Oh, excuse me?
I have to finish my sentence because I'm very organized.
Okay.
Your lawsuit is about the value or the return of the property that was missing from the stored area where she allowed you to store your property. She is counterclaiming because she says that because of your precipitous actions, she lost a lot of money. She evicted another tenant, and you changed your mind at the last minute, and therefore she's out rent. Right?
Correct.
Now, when you came to California, she told you you could store your stuff someplace. Where?
At a house that they own, because the people were supposed to be out on the 5th, and they weren't out until the 12th, and my stuff arrived on the 10th. I planned this out to work, and...
And also... Just a minute, I didn't ask. That's what I said. The people didn't get out in time.
Yes.
You stored your stuff.
So they offered that.
Where did you put it? In the garage or in the house?
In the garage. It was locked.
Did you have the key to the garage?
Yes, they gave me a key to the garage.
And when you went back to the garage to take your property, did you have to use your key to enter the garage?
Well, they had changed the lock on the one side. There were 2 locks on the door. One side had a lock on it, and the other side, they didn't have the key for the lock, so you had to undo the screws on the hasp to open it up. And that's how her boyfriend had told me how to get in that door.
So you didn't need the key to get in?
No, you did not.
So you knew when you put your stuff in that storage area that there was a way to get into that garage without a key?
Well, there's always a way to break into any place. Yes, but yes.
No,
yes.
you knew
Yes.
that when you put your stuff in that garage, somebody could get in there if they wanted to.
Yes, that's always a possibility. But they assured me that it was a safe neighborhood.
Okay, so what did you find when you went to retrieve your property?
I rented a truck and I went over to the address and I was taking my stuff out and I said, they took some of my stuff. I was looking and noticed that property was missing, and I have a list of the property that's missing. And later I sent her a letter of the property that was missing, and I found one other piece of equipment that was missing since I sent her the letter.
Did she acknowledge that she had taken your property?
She did in the beginning. When I called her on the phone, she called me a lot of dirty names, this foul language she used to me, and she said, well, you're not going to get any of your stuff until you pay us a month's rent because you owe us something. And then she wanted money for storage, and we never even discussed storage.
So when you had this conversation with her, was that the conversation when you told her that you were not moving in?
Yes.
And you had not gone to get your property
That's
yet?
correct.
Is that right?
That was a mistake on my part.
Oh, just a second. So you hadn't gone to get your property yet?
That's correct.
And then she said to you, you're not going to get any of your property until you give me a month's rent. So she wasn't talking about the missing property. She was talking about all your property.
Yes, exactly. I was lucky to get what I got.
Maybe. How much after this conversation did you go out to the property?
About 3 hours.
Okay. When you got out there, is that when you found some property missing?
Yes.
Tell me about the condition of the door when you got out there.
There was a new lock for the left side of the door, and everything, I didn't see anybody look like they broke in the door or anything. It looked pretty secure.
Now, I want you to tell me how you know the defendant.
She is the mother-in-law of a friend of mine that I've known for about 15 years.
Person that you've been friendly with?
Yes, we spent holidays together, and I'm the godfather to her grandchild, and there's a lot of...
The kind of person that you think...
And I assumed that we had a good relationship, and since then I've heard that she said that she always knew that I was a jerk and whatnot. And
well, you really left her in a lurch.
Well, she did want to get these people out of the house. I got my name in the electric for a couple of days, and I told them that I was canceling it. They sent me a bill for $900. I opened up the bill; it was $900, and
I'm not talking about that. They didn't have to pay a bill that's somebody else's bill.
But they were delinquent. The people in there, she wanted to get out of there anyway. She had told a friend that...
Don't tell me what she told anybody else.
But she had told me, too, that she had wanted the tenants out for a while, that they were delinquent on their rent, that they could not afford to pay the rent.
But you might not have done it at that moment unless you said that you were going to rent it, right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so you understand why she was angry. Yes. Now, where did you go? Instead of moving into her house, where did you go?
I'm staying with her son-in-law.
And when did you make those arrangements?
Well, I spoke to him before I came out here, and I said, I'll need to stay for... Is it okay if I stay with you for a couple of days before I move in to this place? I arrived on the 5th of January, and I assumed it was just going to be till the 9th, early the next week I was going to move in.
All right, you're just talking about a couple of days. So you moved in with her son-in-law, and you found out that you liked it?
I believe he kind of wanted me to stay there because I was doing some work for him as well.
Are you paying rent there?
No.
So you're living someplace now rent-free?
But I'm doing work there, so it's not. Nothing is free.
But you're not paying any rent?
That's correct.
Mrs. Shapiro.
Yes.
I have a question for you. First question is, did you take any of his property to hold as collateral for him paying any rent?
No, I did not.
So you don't know about any missing property?
No, I do not.
Is there anyone else in your house that might have taken the property?
I don't know. I am not aware of any.
Who else lives in your home?
I have 2 teenage daughters, a granddaughter, and my boyfriend.
Tell me what property is missing, sir.
I have a list right here.
Well, give me the big items.
Okay, a sampler, a banjo that was my recently deceased father's. It was probably 1940s banjo. It's worth a lot of money.
Did you see that in your house, a banjo?
No.
I don't even know what I'm supposed to, have taken. I have no idea.
Yes, she does.
tell me
Jazz
she
bass,
does.
a banjo, a sampler, a bass amp, an Ovation guitar that was my friend's that I was bringing out here to return. They took that, and she came over to the house and returned it because she's trying to get him mad at me saying that I stole it.
Just a second. Did you have his guitar at any point?
Yes.
How did you get it?
My boyfriend brought from the property an Ovation guitar that my daughter, who's married to my son-in-law, who is a celebrity musician, and they had reported it stolen on their last move because they could not find it. It had been missing for 3 years. I guess my boyfriend had called Rick, my son-in-law, and he said, well, I have it here, and so I returned it.
How did you get it? He put it in storage.
I don't know how.
How did your boyfriend get it?
Well, he manages my properties.
So your boyfriend had access and went into this
Yes.
property. So you may not have been to the property, but it's very possible and probable that your boyfriend did go into the storage unit.
Oh, yes, we have tools there.
And take a guitar that he had put in there and brought it back to your house.
Yes.
Okay. And where is that guitar?
It's with Rick James, my son-in-law.
So you have it back.
Yes, that's back.
Was there any other property that your boyfriend brought home?
No, not at all.
Well, Mr. Shepard, you may be suing the wrong person, sir, because you don't have any proof that the defendant personally went to your property. She is under no obligation with regard to that property. You took your property there of your own free will. You could have put it in you store it, what are they called? Jiffy store, or you store it, or...
Yeah.
But you understand, storage units. That would have been something that you could have done, but you chose to put it where you did, and absent proof that she actually took your property, I can't find her responsible for it monetarily. If the boyfriend took it, it's another story.
But even if he did it under actions for her...
How are you going to prove that?
She told me that.
She told you what?
She told me that I wasn't going to get any of my stuff, and she was
She told
extorting
you
me.
that, sir, at the moment that you called her and told her that you weren't moving in. And 3 hours later, you went to get your property, and some of it was gone.
Yes.
You cannot establish that anyone was acting as her agent in taking your property.
What do I have to do to establish that he was working as an agent?
Well, she's not going to admit it.
I have a letter here. I had a witness, but she became ill this morning. I don't really care about material stuff. But there's a putter that was my father's, and my father passed away a year ago. A banjo. I could care less about material stuff. Oh, the glitters is not gold. Let me get this letter.
What does he want to show me?
This is a letter from
I don't take letters.
Okay. Excuse me.
Letters are hearsay. Can't examine a letter. I can't ask questions of a letter. If the boyfriend, who you have evidence, went into your property and actually took a piece of property that was left there, you may have a case against him. But you're not going to be able to prove agency with regard to her. Agency says he was acting on her behalf. You may speculate with regard to that, but I don't think you're going to be able to prove it. Now, let's get to your counterclaim.
All right.
You lease property?
I have a rental property, and I have one house for sale.
Okay, so you have a rental property, and you know when you have a rental property, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to get a lease signed.
Correct.
And that no obligation to pay rent is made until the lease is signed, until you have a
Well,
contract.
I do have an application that he signed.
I'm not talking about an application.
Okay.
I'm talking about a lease, which is a contract.
Correct.
You know that. You don't have a contract with him.
No.
So
I do not have. I have a application to rent and a rental deposit. I did not take the deposit because he was in Massachusetts at the time. He was on his way out. He had 3 cable installation jobs waiting for him, he said, because otherwise I wouldn't have said, okay, I'll get these people out, because I did not
Absolutely.
want a house for sale and an empty rental.
I
at the same
absolutely
time.
understand, Mr. Shapiro.
I have it signed on December 22nd. We had discussed this over and over from probably around beginning or mid-November. And I said, this is a big house. He said, yes, I can't find anything on the internet for the same amount that will take a dog and a cat. And I said, okay, well, you know what? These people, I will serve them with a 30-day notice if you realize that that doesn't guarantee that they'll be out in 30 days. And that from that point, all I can do is evict them, and then that can go on for months. He was perfectly aware of that. So on December 4th, I have it here. I served them, my attorney served them actually, with a service for a 30-day notice. And it took them about 45 days to get out. Going out, because they had been served, they trashed my house. It cost about $4,000 to put the house back together. They broke tile, they burned a hole in the carpet. They, you know, they were upset. I also have the Starving Students, which is the company that he called. My daughter works there. She got him a discount to move out here to my address. I have the work order with my address in Alhambra on it.
There's no question that you had an agreement with him.
And then
the question is, Mr. Shapiro, did you have a binding contract?
No, I did not have
well,
it
if you
signed.
don't have a binding contract, which would be a lease signed by the two of you,
well, I don't.
I'm speaking. That contains all the terms and conditions of your lease.
We discussed it on the phone, and unfortunately, he's a friend. My father said, never trust a friend. I should have known that. But he assured me the day that I had them served, he swore on his mother's life that he would take the property.
Ms. Shapiro, you say you had a lawyer do some work for you?
Well, I have yes, real estate attorney.
At some point, did you speak to the real estate attorney and ask the real estate attorney whether you had a case with regard to suing the plaintiff for damages for not taking this property?
I did speak to a friend of mine who's a California arbitrator who said that in the state of California, a verbal agreement is binding, and that since he had put the utilities in his name, that it did show intent.
Oh, I believe he had an intent to move into your property at the time he moved out there.
And the day...
I believe that he had the intent to move in.
The day before
until he got a better deal.
Exactly.
That's why you have a contract.
Well, I was shocked at the total disregard that he had for the fact that I do have 2 dependents and I take care of my granddaughter, and this is my business now. I'm a retired registered nurse of 23 years. I'm trying to do real estate investment, and I'm learning the hard way. But this man is now sponging off of my celebrity son-in-law like he has before, and is in total disregard of my financial arena. He does not care. All he cares about is being in the celebrity home.
Let me ask you this question, Ms. Shapiro. I'm going to make you feel a little bit better. Maybe I'll make you feel a little bit better. Not a lot better. You evicted these people, and they were very angry.
No, they got out. I didn't have to evict them.
Okay, but they were very angry, according to you. And they trashed your house. And you spent thousands of dollars to put it together. Irrespective of when you served them notice, unless you let them move out on their own time schedule. If these are the kind of people that would trash your house, they were going to trash it, right?
Not to the extent they did.
You don't know that.
Well,
But they
I
did,
don't
because
know,
it takes a certain kind of person to cause damage to somebody else's property and then feel as if they can walk away from it. I assume that you brought suit against them.
No.
Why not?
Because you can't get blood out of a turnip. The lady is now, she was an MTA bus driver. She was on strike, you know, on and on
so
and
you
on.
decided not to proceed with that. Is the house rented now?
I just rented it on the 15th. I got what I was asking from Barry.
Okay.
And I do have pictures of the garage and the lock and how incredibly flimsy it is, and if you want to see them.
I have to believe you when you say you do not have his property, because he has no proof that you do have his property.
She's lying.
No, I'm not lying.
You can't feel that from her? You can't feel that she's lying? What do they say? You know she's lying because her lips are moving?
Case is dismissed.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Administrator Frank Zott is suing former landlord, 45-year-old technical writer Felicia Berger, for the return of rent, a security deposit, and for moving expenses.
Order. All rise. Yeah, this is case number 304 on the calendar in the matter of Zott versus Berger. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Folks, have seats.
Mr. Zott, according to what I read, sir, you rented a room from the defendant. Did you find this through an ad in the paper?
I used the internet, and I found an ad, a number of ads, but
But you ultimately rented a room from the defendant.
Yes,
And what was the monthly rental?
$550.
So far correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your complaint states that you were there about 2 weeks, and you were forced to move out because of the defendant's unruly boyfriend.
That's right.
You not only paid her in advance the $550, but you also gave her a $1,000 deposit. And you minimally want that $1,000 deposit back. You also want moving expenses and some retroactive rent.
She actually did give me back $900 of the $1,000 deposit.
Did you cash the check?
Yes.
So what do you want?
I would like to be reimbursed for the second half of the month, which is the time that I didn't stay there because I felt that I was being put in a potentially violent domestic situation.
Well, why don't you tell me about that?
Well, at first Felicia was working in San Francisco, and I was shown the apartment by a friend of hers named, and Felicia came back for the weekend. That's when I first met her and gave her the cash money for the first month's rent plus a $1,000 security deposit. And the next day, when she was going to fly back to California, that's when she told me, oh, incidentally, I have a boyfriend who has been causing me a lot of trouble in the past, and sometimes he gets drunk and bangs on the doors and windows, and if he comes around, make sure you don't let him in. And I had already paid her for the month's rent, and I really had to start work the following Monday, and I was in no position to try to find another place to stay because I had just moved. And then Felicia left. After about 10 days, she got homesick and came back to her house in Palm Beach Gardens. The second day that she was back, at 1 a.m. in the morning, I'm sleeping in my bedroom, and somebody is banging on the side door of the house and making a big commotion out there.
That's the first time it had happened?
Yes.
Okay.
So I didn't say anything to Felicia about it the next morning, but I immediately made up my mind. You know, what she told me about this guy is absolutely true, and I didn't want to be there if it happened again. I immediately went on the internet again trying to find another place to rent, and I decided that I would move into another room. And the second incident happened the day after the banging on the door incident. I was sitting in the living room watching TV, and this side doorbell rang. Felicia went to answer the door, and I could hear the conversation, but I couldn't see who was involved. Somebody is asking Felicia, whose bicycle is that over there? Because he saw my bike. I had a bicycle. And she's being evasive and not telling him, oh, that belongs to a guy I'm renting a room to. She's saying, oh, that belongs to some guy. And he says, who? What do you mean, some guy? And, oh, what does it matter? It just belongs to a guy. And I'm wondering, why isn't she telling him that this belongs to a guy who's just renting a room? So she lets him in the house. And he comes walking into the living room, and I feel like I have to diffuse this situation. I get up and introduce myself. I say, yeah, my name is Frank. I'm renting a room from Sheila here. Her boyfriend gets an agitated look on his face and takes her into one of the other bedrooms, and they have a heated conversation in there. And he leaves in a huff, once again confirming to me that, you know, there's some potential friction here that I want to get away from. And so the day after that, I think, is when I actually left Felicia a note explaining to her why I left and asking for the second half of my monthly rental back.
Okay. I'll hear you.
I rented a room while I was working in Silicon Valley, California. I'm a consultant, and I do have to travel frequently. Frank moved in and did give me the $550 for the month's rent, as well as a $1,000 security deposit. It was my home, and I had a lot of personal possessions there, and he offered to give me the $1,000 to show good faith. I went back out to California to work. When I returned...
Did you have a conversation with him before you went to California? And did you, in fact, tell him that you had a boyfriend who sometimes gets a little out of hand?
Your Honor, I do not recall that conversation.
Well, if you don't recall it, then I have to believe that what Mr. Zott says is true.
I told him not to let anyone into the house.
Now you remember. You just said you didn't remember.
I said I don't recall the specifics of...
Okay, well, he recalls the specifics, and I have to rely on his version.
The house...
Did you tell him about not letting anybody into the house before or after you accepted his $1,550?
It was the time I was leaving for California, after I accepted the money.
Okay. Did you ever have a restraining order against this boyfriend of yours?
No.
Had you ever applied for a restraining order against this boyfriend of yours?
I did at one time, yes, and I withdrew it.
When?
It was
I've got it right
probably
here.
a year before
Oh, you do?
that.
Yes,
May I
Your
see
Honor.
it? How'd you get a hold of that?
I went to the courthouse thinking that I might have to prove something like this.
You're so smart. You're so smart, sir. Well, you remember what you said in this application for a protective order about the boyfriend?
Yes, Your Honor.
This is not a one-shot deal. These are many dates. You say he came to the door while he was drunk, trying to break the door down. Police were called. He left a message about you being with another man, threatening you, that he called again on the same day, questioning you about kissing a man on your patio and spying on you. He threw a kitchen knife at you and prescription glasses. I mean, this is pretty violent behavior that you're describing here.
Yes, Your Honor.
After you filed for this protective order and withdrew it, did you continue to see him?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, didn't you feel, Miss Berger, that you had an obligation to tell someone to whom you were renting a room that this potentially hazardous situation might be difficult?
Your Honor, seeing as I was 3,000 miles away in California, I felt that the boyfriend would not be anywhere around the house.
But he was. In the early morning hours, which precipitated his starting to look for another room.
Your Honor, as the plaintiff stated, he did not tell me of this situation. I was not aware of this situation.
You don't have to be aware of it. He has to be aware of it.
Well, he did not see who was at the door.
You know who was at the door. This is a potentially dangerous situation. You had a boyfriend who had in the past threatened you over seeing other men. Here you had somebody who was living with you. Your boyfriend clearly was unhappy about that as a result of the conversation.
Your Honor, he was not living with me. This is an investment property. I do not live there. It is not my primary residence.
Living in your home.
I was in California. This is a rental property.
Miss Berger, when you came back from San Francisco, did you sleep in that house?
Once or twice, yes.
I don't care, once or twice, yes. You were living in San Francisco, but when you decided to come home, that was your home. You weren't renting him a whole house, you were renting him a room. If this wasn't your home when you were in town, your boyfriend would not have come over to visit. Wasn't his friend.
Your Honor, when I came back from California, I pulled into the driveway to see my cat outside in the driveway with his ribs sticking out, panting and thirsty because he had apparently been left outside for 3 or 4 days. I walked into the house, which smelled like someone died in there because there were raw chicken parts left in the kitchen. The place stank to high heaven.
That's ridiculous.
The laundry, I had rented the house completely furnished with sheets and towels. When he left the house, he didn't bother to do his dirty laundry. I don't do dirty laundry. I had to clean the house because it was such a pig pen.
Did you tell me that you left him to babysit for your cat?
Yes, she did.
You just told me this wasn't your home. How do you leave animals in someplace that's
because
not
I was
your home?
working in San Francisco and I was not living.
Did you
in
tell him you
Florida.
were going to leave the cats there before you took his money?
Yes, I did.
Judge, she asked me to do her the favor of taking care of her 2 cats while she worked on this job temporarily in California. I was happy to do it. And the cats were well fed, well cared for. And while we're at it, before we go any further with this, I have a copy of an email that Felicia sent to me after I had left. Told me I can come back anytime I want to. She's sorry that I left. No mention about me being anything other than an ideal tenant.
You say, Frank, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. Scott, I assume that that's the boyfriend, has tried to ruin everything in my life, my friends, finances, and jobs. Of course, I will give you your half-month's rent back. Anyway, wherever you went, if it doesn't work out and you don't like it, please know you can come back whenever you want. That doesn't sound like somebody who came home and found their house stinking. Ms.
Sure
Berger.
doesn't.
I was so shocked when I went to the house and got your note. So he left a note in the house.
Your Honor, I was shocked. I walked in and I saw the cat outside. I walked in and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he moved out, and I left.
Give me a break, Ms. Berger. Nobody writes this kind of a note. I feel terrible for your inconvenience. Scott would only have bothered me, not you, so I tried not to be around much. Now, Mr. Saad, you want moving expenses, emotional distress, all that other kind of stuff. Let me tell you this. Sometimes you move into an apartment and it has roaches. This one had a roach and it had a name. But that doesn't mean that you're entitled to all this other stuff that you're suing for. You are, however, entitled to your $325, which represents the other $100 from the $1,000 and half a month's rent, because I find that you had good cause to move out. That's all.
Half a month's rent on 550. That's 275.
275. Just a second. Just a second. My mathematician. Hold it. 375.
375.
Thank you, Bird.
Quite welcome. Pardon, excuse. You may step out.
The only thing that's a little disappointing is that Felicia still is living in some fantasy world.
You don't leave a house in South Florida with no air conditioning and leave garbage in the kitchen so bugs and roaches can come into your kitchen. It was disgusting.
Judge Judy is a cultural icon, and I really think she did a great job on this case.
And now the next case.
All parties on Faulkner versus Brannon. Step forward, please.
44-year-old utility worker Steve Faulkner is suing neighbor 53-year-old factory worker Juanita Brannon for having him falsely arrested. Juanita says she had Steve arrested when he violated her restraining order.
Mr. Faulkner, you and the defendant are next-door neighbors, who I gather from your papers have had a rather acrimonious relationship. So bad that there is a protective order against you that was issued by a court. Now, your complaint, Mr. Faulkner, states that the defendant had you falsely arrested for violating this protective order, and you want her to pay all kinds of damages for having you falsely arrested, mental anguish, et cetera, et cetera. When was the protective order issued?
5/15 of 2000.
Can I see it, please? What caused you to have him arrested, and when?
On June 2nd of 2000, Your Honor, I had came home from work about 3:30 when Mr. Faulkner came.
Shh, just a second.
When Mr. Faulkner come home from work, he did not stop his truck, but he pulled up close and he said, "This beer's for you." About 6:30 that night, he was still drinking, wandering around out in his yard with the camcorder. He come across the road, the easement, had a camcorder like this and a beer and this, and he said, "Again, this beer's for you. I want to take some pictures," and the sign's going.
What sign?
Oh, we have an RV sign that's on our property. Here's some of the pictures. I've got a whole bunch of them, but there's a few of them. And so I
he was taking pictures of a sign.
This is from originally case, but he was taking pictures of that sign because he's going to knock it down again.
What sign were you photographing, sir?
The RV park sign that they put in my driveway the day of the accident.
Is this the sign?
No, ma'am, that's the old sign.
I'm not interested in these pictures. I want to see the sign that he was photographing. You have a picture of it?
Yes, ma'am.
I got a VCR picture of it, recording of it.
I want to see that. So would you put that in, Bert, please? And there's no question, Mr. Faulkner, that you were, in fact, videotaping this sign.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
But I do not even drink, Your Honor.
That's the sign that you were videotaping?
Yes, ma'am, that she stuck in my driveway for 30 years, that we used for 30 years.
That is not his property.
But do they have an easement to get onto their property?
Their easement is in the back of the RV park.
So he's videotaping the sign. Did you call the police?
I asked him to leave, and he turned around, and that's when he said, "Again, this beer's for you."
Where was he videotaping the sign from?
He was on the other side in the RV park, about 15 foot from me, and I'm scared of him, Your Honor. He's tried to get me once with a truck number. I didn't know what he was going to do.
Your Honor, I got an eyewitness where I was standing when I was filming the sign.
I'll see your witness. Go ahead.
Your Honor,
Step up. Who are you?
His neighbor.
Close.
His neighbor.
Go ahead.
I seen him videotaping. I was looking out the window, and I said, "Wow, when they put that sign back up?" And
Who took the old sign down?
It was not, no.
Knocked down by whom?
I just know it was down, and then they went ahead and put the new one up.
Who knocked it down?
I did, Your Honor.
Why'd you do that for?
To get out of my driveway.
What did you knock it down with?
My pickup truck. That's another case. I'm still in process of that.
Mm-hmm. Where was he when he was videotaping?
Right on the edge of the driveway going in, their road going in, on the pavement, right next to the sign.
Staying on my property at all times. I did not step near her property or on her property or say a word to her, and I sure didn't have a beer in my hand.
I've looked at these pictures, and it seems to me if you put up this sign in such a way that makes it very difficult for them to get into their property when you could just as easily move it over 5 feet. Pay attention to me. when you could just as easily move it over 5 feet or 10 feet, have the same sign, and make everybody happy? Why do you choose to put up a sign in an area that is going to cause conflict?
Well, Your Honor, like I say, I don't know.
You know a lot. You know a lot.
Right.
Why would you create more conflict instead of moving the sign a little tiny bit over and everybody would be happy? Why do you choose not to do that?
We can do that, Your Honor. And
Right. Well, why didn't you? Even though the property may be yours, maybe they have an easement, who knows? You have no answer.
No, ma'am.
Your Honor, she has
Speak
caught me
not. How long were you incarcerated?
for 4.5 days. After 4.5 days, I never appeared in front of the judge, so they threw it all out.
Okay. You have papers on that?
I've got the police report and that.
Do you have the dismissal order or whatever you got after this last arrest?
Yes, ma'am, right here.
Can I see it, please? Well, were
I
you
was
ever
never
charged for violating
No,
the
ma'am.
order?
No, ma'am. Never charged.
How come you didn't tell the sheriff he said anything about cursing at you with this beer?
No, he didn't write it in there, but I told
It's
him
not
about it.
here. The officer would have recorded that if you said it, because that's threatening. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're a fibber. You didn't tell the police the whole story, madam, because you certainly were able to lie to me here today with the same kind of face that you probably spoke to the police. I have another problem with what you do, Miss Brennan, and that is being not neighborly is a very stupid thing to do. You can make the same statement that this is an RV park and people are welcome and you offer certain services and move that sign over to property which would not interfere with anybody else comfortably getting onto their property. You choose not to do that. You choose to make a problem. What does it give you except satisfaction to put the sign where you think is your property? You're not using it. I mean, they're not building the Empire State Building on your property. So I think that you misstated the facts to the police officer that he, in fact, came onto your property. That's what I believe. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,500. That's all.
Thank you.
Excuse me, you may step out.
He wants our land to...
3-year-old grocery store clerk Jason Bulkey for damaging her rental car by hitting it with a bottle. Jason says the car was damaged because Mary wrecked it while driving drunk.
Order. All rise. Quiet in the courtroom. Now, this is case number 85 on the calendar in the matter of Carrigan versus Bulkey. Parties have been sworn in. Judge may be seated. Folks, have seats.
Ms. Carrigan, it is your claim that the defendant, who is your boyfriend's brother, caused damage to your rental car. And
That's
he did
correct.
that in a purposeful manner. Want to tell me when this happened?
This happened on the morning of January 28th,
What time in the morning?
about 8 a.m.
Where were you?
We were over at a mutual friend's house.
What were you doing there?
I was driving by to pick up my rental car I had let my boyfriend use to take his friends home.
Okay, so your boyfriend was driving your rental car.
Correct.
Took his friends home. What time had he taken your rental car?
About 15 minutes before that, and I had gone home.
What, were you partying all night?
We were at a friend's party the night before, yes.
So everybody was drinking all night?
Not all night. We stayed there the night prior and came home in the morning.
So everybody was partying all night?
Correct.
Okay. Why did you have a rental car?
I had a rental car because I had been in an accident prior to this about a month before.
When you drove by there, you were driving another car.
I was driving my boyfriend's car.
And he took the rental car to take some people home.
Correct.
15 minutes before you arrived, and what did you go there for?
He was supposed to be right back, so I went to go find him in the car and went to go get something to eat. And I was driving by and noticed that the car was parked there. So I stopped.
Okay. Go ahead.
I had also noticed that his friends that were with him that evening had bought beer, and I was upset and wanted to switch cars and wanted to leave. Unfortunately, we ended up arguing. He wouldn't give me my keys so we could switch cars, so I would have the rental car and he would have his car. We argued. People came out of the house, arguing quite loudly. Once I got my keys, his car was blocking the rental car in.
So you couldn't pull out?
Correct.
Okay.
Everyone was in a frenzy, really upset. And from the back of the house...
Why was everybody in a frenzy? What were you
It was
yelling
early
about?
in the morning and we were arguing.
What were
quite
you arguing
loudly,
about?
Because he wouldn't give me my keys. And once I received my keys, I got in my vehicle, the rental car. The defendant and his girlfriend, which is here as well, came out of the back of the house. She went into the house and he came and punched the driver's side window. I was in the vehicle at the time.
Did he say anything to you?
I couldn't hear. I was in the vehicle. The windows were rolled up.
Okay, so he punched the window. You admit that you punched the window?
Yeah, with an open hand. I hit the window.
Whatever. You admit you punched the window, that the window did not break?
There was other window, though.
The window didn't break?
No, I hit the passenger window, though.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but he hit the driver's side window with his fist.
Whatever.
And
it didn't break?
No, that's correct.
Okay, so continue.
He stepped back, picked up a bottle, and threw it against the driver's side window. Fortunately, it did not hit the window. It hit the side panels, causing them to chip and causing both the driver's side and the driver rear side to chip as well. I have pictures.
With one bottle, it caused damage on two sides?
It was like a 40-ounce bottle. There's bottles all over that yard there.
Well, let me see where you say this one bottle caused damage to the car.
I have 3 pictures of the same. It's driver's side. It hit the panels in between the front seat and the back seat.
Oh, I see.
I also have a detailed invoice and an estimate on it as well. Sorry.
And you saw him throw this bottle?
Yes, I was in the driver's side, sitting in the car.
Okay.
Okay.
Ready?
Well, I was sleeping over at my friend's house, and my brother came to wake me up to drink. I guess they'd been partying all night. He wanted me to drink with them. It was about 7 in the morning or so, and I didn't want to get up. I was tired. I was woken up a few more times. A couple of my friends woke me up, people that lived there, telling me to get her out of there. She was in the driveway, roasting her tires and yelling and screaming. Woke up everybody, all the kids and everything. And after about 45 minutes, everybody bothering me to get her out of there, I finally got up and went out there and asked her to leave, and she flipped me off, and then I hit the window, and then she backed out and left. And I guess, from what I understand, before she got there, she had wrecked the rental car because she was driving drunk, and then she walked home and got the other car, and my brother had came over in the rental car because she left after she wrecked it. That was pretty much it, and then she left. And this guy was there with them when they were drinking and partying all night.
I believe they were drinking and partying all
And
night.
he offered to give her a ride home in her car because she was very drunk, and she pulled a knife on him, so he left. That's pretty much it. So,
Either one of you two people outside at the time that the defendant...
She was out.
Shh, I'm not finished. That the defendant hit or punched the car window.
Yes.
Step up. Go ahead.
When I was there, I went inside after when he
Look
went
at
out
me.
to try.
Look at me. Don't look over there.
To try and get her to leave, and I heard yelling outside, so I went outside again, and that's when I seen him go up to the car and I guess ask her to leave, and then I seen him hit the right side passenger front seat window with his palm.
And then what did you see?
And then I seen her exit.
Exit where?
She left.
What time had all the people arrived from the party at your house?
Well, it was a friend's house, maybe around 6:45, I think it was, because I was supposed to get up and leave at 8, and I remember everybody just coming in. It was real chaotic.
Let's talk about before she got there.
It was when, probably, yeah, about 6:45, 7.
And who brought the beer?
I'm not aware who brought the beer. I do know that his brother came in and asked if he wanted to drink, but I'm not sure who brought the beer.
How much beer did they bring?
We didn't even see the beer.
I didn't ask you what you saw.
Sorry. Yeah,
We don't know.
that is correct. I did not see any beer. They just asked if he wanted to go drink, and he declined. His brother left.
So you didn't see any beer? No beer around?
No, I did not see.
When they were waking me up, they had beer. I didn't see how much beer there was. They had beer in their hands. But
other than that, I did
didn't
not
see
see a
boxes of beer
12-pack
or
or anything like that. Yeah, I did not see any other beer.
Did you see any beer bottles?
I think there was 1 or 2 in the recycling bin that had been there, but I mean nothing. There wasn't bottles strewn all over the driveway or anything like that.
Is his brother still your boyfriend?
Yes, he is. This has caused a lot of problems between us and family issues as well because we both live with his father.
Where's your boyfriend today?
He's in the audience.
Was he present when his brother threw the bottle?
Yes, he was.
What's his name?
Seth Bulkey.
Seth Bulkey. Step up.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Mary Carrigan says her boyfriend's brother, Jason Bulkey, damaged her rent-a-car in a fit of rage. Jason says Mary damaged it herself when she was driving drunk.
Would you state your name?
Seth Bulkey.
Would you swear him, please?
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in these matters?
Yes.
Take your hands out of your pockets, please. Were you present on the 28th of January of this year when this incident occurred?
Mm-hmm.
You have to answer yes or
Yes.
no. Did you see your brother throw a bottle at the car?
Yes, he did.
Where did he get the bottle from?
on the ground or he brought it out, I don't know.
But you actually saw him physically throw the bottle at the car?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. You may be seated. I have estimate here for $500, which is the $500 deductible judgment for the plaintiff. That's all, $500.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Her acting crazy happens all the time. I try and stay away from her.
I just didn't want to become another one of his victims.
Don't drink and drive.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Kamna versus Seaman. Step forward, please.
20-year-old general contractor Jason Kamna is suing former friend, 21-year-old cook Nicholas Seaman. Jason claims Nicholas took his car without permission and was arrested for driving under the influence.
Mr. Kamna, you and the defendant were friends, according to your complaint. One evening, he came to your house with his girlfriend. You say he got quite drunk. His girlfriend left. You let him sleep on the couch. You woke up the next morning, found him gone with your car. You got a call sometime later from him indicating he had been pulled over, was charged with driving while under the influence of alcohol, spent the night in jail. The car got a little trashed. Your car was now in the impound. You want from him the money that was spent to get the car out of impound, to clean up from where he threw up all over the car, to fix the damage that he caused when he crashed into something, etc. You want all the money that you spent as a result of him taking the car. The defendant says that he had permission to take your car. And as a matter of fact, you asked him to take your car. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Because you were hungry at 2 o'clock in the morning. He took your car, and it's all your fault because the car did not have updated tags. So the car was pulled over. As a result of that, he was arrested because in addition to your car not having tags, you also caused him to be intoxicated. You caused him to throw up in front of the officer all over your car. You did that too, right?
Correct.
And therefore, it is not his fault, and he shouldn't have to pay anything.
Right, I should burden the expense.
That's his position. Convince me.
Okay, Your Honor. I figure for the last 3 to 4 months...
Let's start with, I got to his house with my girlfriend.
All right, well, I got to his house probably around 10:30, and I probably had, over the whole night, probably about 6 beers.
After the 5th one, who remembers? Yes, go ahead.
I still knew perfectly clear what I was doing. I went to Taco Bell because he asked me to go to Taco Bell. We were kind of hungry. After you have a few beers, you do get kind of hungry.
Just a second. Your girlfriend left.
She had already left. She left about 11:30.
Is this your girlfriend?
Yes, it is. Marina.
Perfect. Step up here for a second. How old are you?
18.
Was it your intention to spend your evening with your boyfriend?
Yes.
Did you leave him at Mr. Kamma's house because he had gotten a little intoxicated?
No, Your Honor, I did not.
Why did you leave him at the house?
It was getting late, and I wanted to go home. It was about 11:30, 12 o'clock when I left.
Right.
Nicholas had not been drinking yet. Jason, by the time we had got there at 10:30.
Just a second. If you wanted to go home, why didn't your boyfriend drive you home at midnight?
He was going to stay with Jason.
Was that the plan, or was that the plan once you got there?
No, that was the plan. He was going to stay at Jason's house that night.
Okay, and he hadn't been drinking at all?
No.
Go ahead.
And by the time that we had gotten to the house, Jason had already had alcohol in him.
So Jason was drunk?
Yes, and the reason why I left at 11:30 is to go home because it was getting late, and Jason was being rude to me because he was drinking. And I didn't want to put up with it, so I left to go home.
Jason was being rude to you?
Yes.
Was he being rude to you in front of your boyfriend?
Yes. He always
He
has.
does it quite.
Shh. Go ahead.
He does it quite frequently, Your Honor, actually.
Really?
Yes.
Then why would you put your girlfriend in a position of going to his house for even a minute while Jason was drunk and being rude to your girlfriend?
Your Honor,
Shut! I'm not asking you a thing.
Well, honestly, I've been really, really good friends with him throughout the past year and a half.
Wonderful. And how long has she been your girlfriend?
5.5, 6 years, off and on.
And he was being rude to her that evening?
Yes.
Did you hear him being rude to your girlfriend?
Yes.
And what you do is you say, I'm going home with my girlfriend. You couldn't drive, is that right? You have no license.
That's right.
Is
Your
that
Honor.
right? And that's a result of driving while under the influence of alcohol?
The reason I had my license suspended was because I had too many tickets. And
Tickets
actually,
for what?
for speeding. And I was just...
Shh, I'm not finished. So your girlfriend was doing the driving. You bring your girlfriend over for an evening at Jason's house. He's drunk. He's rude to your girlfriend. So you let her go home at midnight and you stay. According to your answer, sir, it was 2 o'clock in the morning when you got hungry. Is that right?
About 1:30, 1:45. It was 2
So
o'clock when we got pulled over.
I'm speaking. And according to your girlfriend, you had had nothing to drink before she left. Is
That's
that right?
right.
So in the span of approximately, according to you, an hour and a half, you consumed 6 beers.
Yeah. Yes, Your Honor.
That's a lot of beers in an hour and a half.
That's true.
So you were pretty drunk.
Yeah. When I
Now-
was pulled over, I was. At the time, when I left the house, I could still walk perfectly straight line.
Okay, so you get pulled over, and you ask for your license. You got a suspended license. There were no tags on the car. Tell me about what happened when you threw up in the car. I
Well,
want to hear all about that.
I figured it was probably just my nerves. I
Tell
was
me about
really,
it.
really
The police
nervous.
officer pulls you over.
When the police officer pulled me over, he comes to the window and he asked me whose car this was. I told him it was my friend Jason Kamnas. And I said it wasn't even 2 blocks away from the house where I got pulled over. When I left Jason's house, there was a cop parked right in the
I
front.
don't care. I want to know when you threw up in the car.
Okay. After he came, he took down all my information and went back to his car. He was going to write out a ticket. He had a ticket in his hand for driving while suspended and uninsured, which I have right here,
I don't need
with
it.
no tags.
I don't need it.
And when he comes back is when I really started getting nervous, and I did get sick.
In the car.
In the car.
That's
So
when he placed you under arrest.
That is when he placed me under arrest. I asked him to
Perfect.
place
You
me
have
under arrest.
all the estimates?
With me, I have the
Well, I only
towing.
want to know what's with you, sir. That's your
Yes,
proof.
I've had an estimate given.
What was the damage on the car?
The damage occurred to the driver's side front and on my parents' house where the car was parked. When you back down the driveway, you need to back down at an angle, kind of, and if you crank the wheel too hard, the front end will hit the garage. And it hit the garage and took a chunk out of the 2x6 that surrounds the garage and put a nice little dent in the front.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I remember this whole night clearly. And every single thing I said to the officer, everything I did the whole night, and I do not remember hitting that garage once.
That's too bad.
I don't know where this came from.
That's too bad.
And the dent in the left front bumper, he ran into his brother's car about a month ago on the right rear side, and he did not remember running into the car either. That's what he told his brother.
Why weren't there tags on the car?
Because I couldn't pass the Department of Environmental Quality.
What kind of car is this?
It's an 83 Dodge Rampage,
Uh-huh.
and basically it was negligence on my part not having.
What's $575 from
That this
rental
resulted after the car. I got it out of impound, and when I got it in to drive it, there's puke everywhere, and there was a knock in the motor, and then the motor seized up. I don't know if that's because when the car was sitting there idling, it tends to get really hot, and if it wasn't shut off, it could do some damage.
I'm not paying for a rental car for you, sir. What other damages did you have?
I had my towing fees, and
I have
missed
your towing
6
fees?
6 days of work
6 days of work? Why?
because I had no car.
You had no car anyway. They had expired tags.
Well, all I needed was a temporary permit.
You didn't have it.
Correct.
So you had no car anyway.
Well, I guess technically no.
Right. So if your car isn't registered, you have no car. You have to be responsible. You drive a car, it has to be registered, it has to have proper insurance, but that doesn't mean he can trash your car and say it's not his fault because it didn't have good tags. He was drunk when he took it. He shouldn't have gotten behind the wheel of the car while he was intoxicated. He's got to pay for certain basic fees. If you had had the car cleaned and detailed, I would have charged him for that too.
Your Honor, I offered to clean the car first thing the day I got out of jail. I apologize for everything. We went there to go get the car out of the impound, and we got almost completely there, and we had to turn around because his license was expired. And
So you
I
got
don't
in the
think
car
he had
anyway.
insurance.
Who was driving?
Me.
She was.
I had just taken, we were just getting ready to take Jason to the impound so he could get his car out, and he said, wait, I cannot go. I don't have insurance and I have an expired license.
So he had no car anyway. So who cares whether he rented a car? How did they rent you a car?
Well, the fact of the matter is I did have insurance. And a
How did
valid
they
driver.
rent you a car if you had an expired license?
It was not expired.
What was it?
It was valid. It was a valid Oregon driver's license.
Your Honor, he stated clearly to me that it was not it was already expired.
And that he had no insurance.
Well, in order to rent a car in the state of Oregon, you have to have all the proper
I would say so. That's really interesting.
insurance.
That's really interesting that he was able to rent a car. Who knows? In any event, he owes you $243.50. Judgment for the plaintiff. That's all.
Các em thân mến, chào mừng các em đến với bài học ngày hôm nay nhé. Ở video ngày hôm nay thì cô sẽ giới thiệu với các em một bài tập, đấy là bài tập về chủ đề số tự nhiên. Ở đây cũng khá là phức tạp một chút nếu mà các em chưa nắm rõ được cái quy luật của dãy số tự nhiên. Ở đây này, tìm hai số tự nhiên có tổng là 2345 và giữa hai số đó có 6 số tự nhiên. Ở đây cô sẽ vẽ một chút cái biểu đồ cho các em dễ hình dung. Số đấy là đây chẳng hạn. Thì ở giữa này sẽ có 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 số tự nhiên. Và ở đây là số cuối cùng, số lớn. Đây là số bé. Ở giữa số lớn và số bé có 6 số tự nhiên. Có nghĩa là gì? Có nghĩa là chúng ta sẽ bắt thêm 2 đơn vị đây nữa. Có nghĩa là ở giữa hai số tự nhiên này sẽ có 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Có 7 đơn vị kẹt giữa. Tức là số bé cộng thêm 7 đơn vị nữa thì mới thành số lớn. Vậy thì ở đây là hiệu giữa hai số đúng không? Vì giữa hai số có 6 số tự nhiên nên chúng ta sẽ tìm ra được hiệu của hai số tự nhiên, đó là 6 cộng 1, đúng không ạ? Ở đây là hiệu của hai số đó là 6 cộng 1 bằng 7. Vậy thì ở đây chúng ta sẽ tìm được số lớn và số bé dựa vào tổng và hiệu. Chúng ta đã đưa bài toán về bài toán tổng hiệu rồi đúng không? Số lớn là số lớn ở đây sẽ bằng tổng của hai số cộng cho hiệu của hai số và chia cho 2, đúng không ạ? Ở đây sẽ là bằng 2352. 2 chia 2 được 1, 3 chia 2 được 1, nhớ 1. 15 chia 2 được 7, đúng không ạ? Và còn 1 nữa là 12 chia 2 được 6 nữa. Số lớn ở đây sẽ là 1176. Tiếp theo chúng ta sẽ tìm được số bé. Số bé chúng ta có thể dùng tổng trừ đi hiệu tất cả chia 2, hoặc chúng ta lấy 1176. Chúng ta trừ đi hiệu của hai số ở đây là 7. Đúng không ạ? Sẽ bằng 1169. Và tổng hai số sẽ là 2345. Đấy là kết quả của bài toán của chúng ta. Khi mà các em ghi nhớ rằng là nếu như mà hai số tự nhiên cách nhau 6 số tự nhiên, tức là hiệu giữa hai số đó sẽ là 7. Khi hai số cách nhau, ở giữa hai số có tầng n số tự nhiên thì hiệu giữa hai số sẽ là n cộng 1 nhé các em nhé. Và các em lưu ý để giải những bài toán như thế này.